Chapter 775. To Yi Chen's surprise, the Seven Mysteries Mansion joined forces with the other three forces to deal with the King Mu Fort and sent a pseudo-Emperor Almighty. An existence like Li Fenghan was an existence that countless people looked up to no matter where he was. After all, the King Mu Fort's Fort Master, King Mu, the Bloodblade Sect's Sect Master, Feng Jingyao, and the City Governor's Mansion's Master, Situ Yun, were only at the venerable stage. However, when he recalled that the Seven Mysteries Mansion was the only rank 9 sect in the entire Heaven Wind Sea region, it was not so difficult to understand. Since the Seven Mysteries Mansion could stand above the other forces, its foundation was naturally not weak. However, Yi Chen was still fearless. Even though he was sent flying by Shi Qianhan, who was also a pseudo-emperor, and Luo Tinya, who was infinitely close to the pseudo-emperor's stage, the two of them failed to kill him. Furthermore, the battle on the ghost ship was not a life-and-death battle to him. After all, Shi Qianhan and Qianqian had a close relationship, and Luo Tinya and Luo Shuiyao were siblings. Now that it was Li Fenghan, why would Yi Chen be afraid? When the lightning in the sky flitted across the eyes of the two-inch, let's fight, Yi Chen scoffed. A dazzling saber gleam suddenly shot out of the Master Destruction saber in his hand. The saber gleam seemed like it was going to tear heaven and earth apart as it slashed at Li Fenghan's head. The saber gleam expanded to over 30 meters. From afar, it was as if Yi Chen was wielding a saber that was dozens of meters long with his 8-foot body. Wherever the saber chi passed, the space within a radius of hundreds of meters was forcefully sliced into half. Many soldiers of the City Lord's Mansion of Tianfeng City were struck by the saber chi, and their upper and lower bodies were immediately separated. They screamed miserably and died. Is this the power of the pseudo-emperor's stage? King Mu's eyes were filled with shock when he saw that from afar. Yi Chen's slash made him, who had retreated far away, have goosebumps all over his body. Great saber technique, Li Feng coldly snorted. Facing the blade chi that was quickly slashing towards him, his expression did not change. He then took a step forward and shouted, "Sword come!" Buzz. The void around him suddenly shook. Suddenly, there was a shocking sword light. The sword light pierced through heaven and earth and shot into the clouds in an instant. It was like a huge pillar of light that supported the sky. Whether it was King Mu, Li Hao, and the rest in the distance, or even the entire Tianfeng City, everyone could see this shocking sword gleam. In that instant, everyone's faces were filled with shock. What kind of godly might was this? On the ground, the Bloodblade Sect Master watched this scene in disbelief. He was extremely excited. So the legend of the martial Tao connecting divinity is true. When King Mu heard that, his heart also trembled violently. Martial Tao Almighty. Since ancient times, the ancient barren world had been passed down that the pinnacle of martial arts was the divine connection. It was rumored that there were mighty martial artists who could burn mountains and boil seas with a single drop of their blood. They could grab the stars and the moon with one hand. They were true mystical arts and supernatural powers. They didn't believe this legend at first, but after seeing Li Fenghan's sword, they were truly shocked. Didn't that mean that a pseudo-emperor was the threshold of becoming a god? Junior, I once split mountains and rivers with a single strike. I once entered the world with a single strike. I even shook the northern barbarians with a single strike. Not a single one of the 50,000 troops of the northern barbarians survived. You're only in your 20s or 30s. What do you have to fight me? At that moment, Li Fenghan shot out proudly with a huge sword in his hand. Subsequently, the sword gleam in his hand bloomed. The sword streaked across the sky and stabbed at Yi Chen like an ordinary person holding a sword. It was originally just an ordinary sword strike, but it made King Mu and the rest scalps go numb. It was because when the sword slashed out, the sword gleam absorbed the origin energy of heaven and earth in the air and gradually grew larger. In the end, it surpassed Yi Chen's 30-meter long saber gleam. Boom! The saber gleam and the sword gleam collided, and incomparably surging flames surged in the air. From afar, It looked like a mushroom cloud. The mushroom cloud bloomed dazzlingly above Tianfeng City. Which powerhouse is fighting here? How can it trigger such a terrifying might? Could it be an earth god? Is that the direction of the King Mu fort? At that moment, countless people raised their heads to look at the commotion above their heads. They were completely shocked by the phenomenon in the sky above the King Mu fort. When the mushroom cloud dissipated, a surprised voice came from the sky. Your slash actually broke my shattering mountains and rivers. Li Fenghan stood in the air. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes when he looked at Yi Chun, because Yi Chun was unharmed at that moment. He was still standing proudly in the air. Although I'm unwilling to admit it, I have to say that if you don't die, you'll be able to bear the title of #1 in the Tianfeng Sea area in the future. Li Fenghan narrowed his eyes and shook his head. It's a pity that you met me. Even though I cherish talents, there's no room for redemption once I make a move. As his voice fell, Li Hao, who was on the ground, immediately sneered and said, "The patriarch is getting serious. You will definitely die." Getting serious? King Mu, Feng Jingyao, and the rest were horrified. The earth-shattering commotion earlier was just a warm-up? Ha! Li Hao smirked coldly and was extremely pleased with himself. Since the patriarch is the supreme elder of my 7 Mysteries Mansion, how could his methods be so simple? The patriarch has comprehended the 7 heaven burial swords since a long time ago. That strike just now was only the first move. As if to verify his words, Li Fenghan, who was in the sky, suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, he appeared above Yi Chen's head. Li Fenghan's fingers were like swords. He raised them vertically and slashed down at the crowd below. Second move of the 7 heaven burial swords, Moon Burial Sword. This slash was incomparably sharp. At that moment, the bright moon in the sky strangely disappeared from everyone's sight. The entire Tianfeng city felt the sky suddenly turn dark, and they fell into boundless fear. Someone said in shock, "What happened? Why is the moon gone?" In the boundless darkness, a shocking shadow of a huge sword suddenly appeared above Yi Chen's head. As soon as he lifted his head, the shadow of the huge sword slashed down. It was as if the heavenly river had collapsed. It surged over like a thunderclap. If this sword were to land, the entire King Mu fort would probably be turned into ruins. It would be crushed into pieces in an instant. Yi Chen did not panic at all. He stepped on the ground and extended his hand. 33 days, divine fist, heaven-covering hand. Boom! A huge hand that blotted out the sky rose into the sky. Its divine might was vast and mighty, as if it wanted to shatter this world with a single palm. It carried a heart-palpitating power as it grabbed the huge sword shadow. What martial skill is this? At that moment, Li Fenghan's pupils constricted violently. He had lived for more than 200 years, but he had never seen such a shocking martial skill. It was vaguely similar to the methods of an emperor's stage cultivator. Rumble, as a deafening bang rang out. Under the shocked gazes of King Mu and the rest, a gigantic hand that covered the sky shattered the gigantic sword projection in an extremely domineering manner. Chapter 776. The dark sky regained its brightness once again. Li Hao's expression changed. He stared at Yi Chun in disbelief. What? He broke the patriarch's moon burial sword. He was not the only one. Even Li Fenghan was stunned. Even other pseudo-emperors would not dare to take his attack head-on. However, Yi Chun broke it without dodging at all. Take my punch too. Yi Chun lifted his eyes slightly. He shook his arm and threw a punch. In a short instant, his figure flashed through the air and took a step at Li Fenghan. A surging fist force crushed the air in the air, and the 300-meter-long space turned into a vacuum zone under this punch. This person didn't reveal any true energy, nor did he borrow any power of heaven and earth. How can a simple punch cause such a phenomenon? Could it be that he's a body cultivator? Li Fenghan's expression changed. He took a deep breath in and shouted word by word. Lend me 10 acres of square pond. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the 10 acres of pond below the King Mu fort. The pond trembled violently, and then it became extremely blurry. At the next moment, under everyone's shocked gazes, the pond that was more than 10 acres large forcefully turned into a line, and in the end, it actually turned into a sword. Third and fourth style of the 7 heaven burial swords, C as a sword. As Li Fenghan waved his sleeve, the huge sword rumbled over and suppressed Yi Chun, who was charging at him. A human's power can actually reach such a level. King Mu and the rest were shocked. Break! Yi Chun was fearless. The force of his fist was like a wave. Even though he was extremely tiny compared to the huge sword that was condensed from the pond, even the spatial crack could not destroy his body. Why would he care about the attack before him? Yi Chun's body was instantly covered by the huge sword. However, the scene of Yi Chun being suppressed by the sword that everyone expected did not happen. Rumble, thunderous explosions rang out in the air, and the huge sword that was condensed from 10 acres of sugar shattered with a loud bang. It turned into a curtain of rain that fell from the sky again. A black shadow cut across the rain towards Li Fenghan. The pupils of King Mu and the rest constricted. What's that? He's not dead. Li Hao cried out in shock. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Chun's figure was like a dragon or a tiger. He approached Li Fenghan in an instant. A golden punch tore through the sky like golden lightning descending to the world, causing everyone to close their eyes subconsciously. When everyone opened their eyes, they saw that a vacuum had appeared 100 meters in the sky, and the ground below it had sunk in to form a huge pit. It was like the mouth of a huge bowl. Who won? Everyone widened their eyes and looked at the sky quickly, searching for Yi Chun and Li Fenghan. The next moment, a figure fell heavily to the ground and staggered back dozens of meters. His feet rubbed against the ground, creating a long trench. It was Li Fenghan. However, he was in a sorry state at the moment. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth as he stared at the thin figure standing proudly in the void. King Mu, Li Hao, and the rest were completely stunned. He was injured. Li Fenghan, the pseudo-emperor, was actually injured. When everyone looked at the figure in the sky again, they could not help but be stunned. Disbelief filled their faces. At that moment, Yi Chun was wearing a purple gold crown embedded with treasures on his head, a golden beast mask belt around his waist, 2 bronze breastplates on his front and back, and purple cloud-kicking boots on his feet. His long hair that reached the back of his shoulders fluttered slightly, complementing the figure that was floating in midair. He looked like a god that had descended to the world. There was a faint luster flowing on his skin, and his deep eyes shone with a divine glow that looked down on everything. That was Yi Chun's true appearance in the night demon armor. Even on the ghost ship, he did not let the night demon armor transform into its ultimate form when he faced Shi Qianhan and Luo Tianya's joint attack. However, facing Li Fenghan's sword, Yi Chun and the night demon armor, the master and servant, chose to work together. Jiu rubbed her eyes. He's young master? Nobody said anything, not even Mu Kai Wei. However, there was a gleam in her beautiful eyes as she looked at Yi Chun. It was not an exaggeration to say that Yi Chun had been reborn at that moment. She even suspected that the person opposite her was not Yi Chun, but a god that had descended from the heavens. The difference between the two was too great. Li Fenghan looked at Yi Chun in the sky with an extremely grim expression. He gritted his teeth and asked word by word, "Who exactly are you?" It had been more than 100 years. Ever since he stepped into the pseudo-emperor's stage, he had never been injured for more than 100 years. However, he was severely injured by a young man now. Apart from being furious, he was also shocked by Yi Chun's shocking combat ability. He began to doubt Yi Chun's background. After all, although the Tianfeng Sea area was vast, it was only a drop in the ocean to the 9 provinces of the ancient desolate realm. There had been too many monstrous people like Yi Chun. He even suspected if Yi Chun was a member of the Great Li Dynasty's royal family, a grade 8 sect, or even a grade 7 sect. He might even be a genius from some paradise. Yi Chun stood proudly in the air. His eyes shone like a god that looked down on all living beings. It doesn't matter who I am. What's important is that you've chosen the wrong target. You're destined to die here today. Hearing that, Li Fenghan roared into the sky. He was furious. Junior, I don't care who you are, but congratulations on successfully angering me. So what if Yi Chen's background was shocking? This was the Tianfeng Sea area after all. He took a deep breath in, and a hint of madness flashed through his eyes. He shouted, "You forced me to do this. Before you die, I'll let you witness the last 3 styles of the 7 heaven burial swords." There were a total of 7 styles in the 7 heaven burial swords. Each style was more powerful than the previous style, and it was not just a little bit stronger. In order to kill Yi Chen, he decided to use all 3 styles. Patriarch no. In the distance, Li Hao's expression changed drastically. He said in fear, "No, everyone will die." He more or less understood the Patriarch's strength. He knew that the strongest move in the 7 heaven burial swords was the 7th style. Once the Patriarch used his full strength, it would be enough to destroy half of Tianfeng City. At that time, all of them present would be finished. Back then, when the Patriarch went to the northern barbarians to suppress the barbarians, he only used the 6th style and slaughtered an army of 50,000 barbarians. Thinking to this point, Li Hao became even more afraid. He knelt on the ground and begged Li Fenghan, "Patriarch, I don't want to die." Haha. Li Fenghan acted as if he did not hear his pleas. The killing intent on his face grew stronger. "Even if I have to bear the infamy of eternity, I will definitely kill this brat." Chapter 777. As soon as he finished speaking, the aura on his body rose rapidly, and it vaguely triggered the power of heaven and earth within a radius of 5 kilometers, causing half of the cultivators in Tianfeng City to notice that the origin energy between heaven and earth was rioting. Seeing that the Patriarch was not listening, Li Hao could not help but look at Yi Chen in panic. "Brother, sure, admit defeat now. If you don't admit defeat, at least hundreds of thousands of people in Tianfeng City will die with you. Even King Mu and Mu Kaiwei will be no exception." The expressions of King Mu and the rest changed when they heard that. Was the divinity that Li Fenghan was about to unleash so powerful? Admit defeat? Yi Chen stood proudly in the air. There was endless mockery in his eyes as he looked at Li Fenghan. "So what if I let you unleash your most powerful attack? Infamy for eternity and suffering for all living beings? With me here today, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of people in Tianfeng City, you won't even be able to hurt a single hair on the people from the King Mu fort. You think too highly of yourself." Following his extremely confident words, Li Fenghan was completely enraged. After he roared, he stretched out his arms towards the void and shouted, "7 heaven burial swords, the 5th, 6th, and 7th forms, heaven and earth burial." Rumble. A clap of thunder suddenly flashed across the night sky. Subsequently, under everyone's shocked gazes, the origin energy of heaven and earth above the King Mu fort completely erupted. It was like hurricanes that wanted to tear the sky and earth apart. Walala. The endless curtain of rain began to fall along with the sound of thunder. If one took a closer look, they would realize that it was not raindrops in the rain, but sharp swords condensed from raindrops. The densely packed sharp swords smashed down on the ground like hailstones, covering the sky and covering half of Tianfeng City. What's that? At that moment, everyone in Tianfeng City saw such a shocking scene. They watched in shock as the rain of swords covered the sky and earth. If it was just 1 or 2 swords, they might still be able to dodge. However, these were sword shadows that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Each sword was enough to pierce through any building. It could be said that they had no way out of this predicament. Does the heavens want to destroy my Tianfeng City? Help, I don't want to die. At this moment, the entire Tianfeng City was in a state of panic. Despair appeared on Li Hao's face. "We're all going to die this time." King Mu revealed a bitter smile. He was extremely shocked by Li Fenghan's methods. "I didn't expect us to die like this." Feng Jingyao cursed. "Lunatic, what a lunatic." Even Mu Kaiwei had a look of despair. Among the crowd, only Jiao was relatively calm. She stared blankly at Yi Chen in the air and said by instinct, "I believe in young master." Young master can save us. Ha ha ha. A burst of crazy laughter broke through the void. At this moment, Li Fenghan's expression was extremely gloomy. Junior, do you feel despair? If one took a closer look, they would realize that the aura on his body was extremely weak, and the true energy in his body had been mostly exhausted. That was the price of using the last 3 styles of the 7 Heaven Burial Swords. He would not use it unless he had no other choice. However, he had no choice but to use it to deal with Yichun. I told you, you think too highly of yourself. Yichun scoffed coldly. He suddenly took a step forward when the rain of swords was about to land. He raised his hands slightly and hugged the air. His aura changed as well. As he hugged, to King Mu and the others, it was as if he had grabbed this world. It was a mysterious feeling. Yichun took a deep breath in and crossed his arms in a circle. Divine punch created in 33 days. Yin Yang Wheel. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a gigantic vortex suddenly appeared above Yichun's head. The vortex was like the mouth of a ferocious beast, emitting endless tearing force. At the next moment, the overwhelming rain of swords in the void all changed their trajectories and shot into the vortex at the same time. The vortex also disappeared, and the sky became clear again. The people of Tianfeng City, who were panicking earlier, were all stunned at this moment. They could not believe what they had just seen. Blurk, how is this possible? How is this possible? Li Fenghan spat a mouthful of blood as he looked at the scene in shock. He muttered, "What kind of divinity is this? It can actually break my 7 Heaven Burial Swords." He was extremely confident in his 7 Heaven Burial Swords. Every sharp sword formed from raindrops contained terrifying energy. Even a pseudo-emperor stage cultivator would have to fight it with all his might, let alone mortals. However, Yichun broke it with a single move. On the other hand, King Mu, Li Hao, and the rest, who were already in despair, seemed to have been petrified. However, the shock in their eyes could not be concealed. "Nothing's impossible," Yichun said coldly. "I told you that you've overestimated yourself. You're at your wits' end now, aren't you? So what if I can't kill you?" Li Fenghan's expression changed a few times, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. "You can't stop me if I want to escape." At the next moment, with a wave of his hand, the space beside him began to fluctuate like ripples on a calm surface of water. Shortly after, his figure flashed and flew towards the fluctuating space. This was the power of a pseudo-emperor stage cultivator. If a venerable stage powerhouse could control a trace of space, then a pseudo-emperor would have a certain level of understanding of space. He could fold a portion of space for rapid teleportation. If space was compared to a piece of white paper, ordinary people could only walk from one corner of the white paper to the opposite corner. For Emperor Realm experts, they could fold the paper and overlap the 2 corners. This way, they would be able to reach the other corner in the blink of an eye. The so-called teleportation was the theory of folding space. "I can't stop you." Yichun smiled lightly when he saw that. He extended his palm and clenched it hard at the fluctuating space in the distance. Void quake. As he clenched his fist, the fluctuating space immediately collapsed, and an unparalleled pressure erupted. "Oh, I can't accept this." An incomparably shrill cry resounded, and then streams of scarlet blood gurgled out from the collapsed space. At the next moment, the space returned to its original state. However, other than the blood mist that filled the sky, Li Fenghan's figure was nowhere to be seen. All that was left was a skinny figure dressed in golden armor, standing proudly in the air like a god. The 7 Mysteries Mansion's supreme elder, the pseudo-emperor Li Fenghan, was dead. The entire world was dead silent. Chapter 778. Ancient Desolate Realm, Great Li Dynasty, 8th year of the Tianqi era. That night, when the 7 Mysteries Mansion and the other 3 great forces joined forces to attack the King Mu Fort, countless forces in the Tianfeng Sea area had their eyes on Tianfeng City. This time, the King Mu Fort can be said to be doomed. They've actually been jointly attacked by the 4 great forces. That's for sure. The Seven Mysteries Mansion is the only grade 9 sect in the tens of thousands of territories of the Tianfeng Sea area. Even without him, the Bloodblade sect, Val Valley, and the other 3 great forces can destroy the King Mu Fort. The eldest young mistress of the King Mu Fort, Mu Kaiwei, is the #1 beauty in the Tianfeng Sea area. This time, the King Mu Fort has suffered a great calamity, and I'm afraid the beauty will die. It's said that the son-in-law of the King Mu Fort with the surname Shi is a grade 2 mystic master. He just shone brilliantly in the martial gathering competition. If he's given time, he might even be able to become a grade 3 mystic master. What a pity! Countless forces looked in the direction of Tianfeng City from afar. Some felt pity, some felt sympathy, and most of them were pessimistic about the King Mu Fort. Some of the people who were on good terms with the King Mu Fort struggled for a while, but in the end, they chose to watch from the sidelines. After all, even if they attacked, they were no match for the Seven Mysteries Mansion. However, they did not have to wait for long before a piece of heavy news spread out like a storm with Tianfeng City as the center. The 4 great forces in the Tianfeng Sea area led by the Seven Mysteries Mansion had joined forces to step into Tianfeng City to destroy the King Mu Fort. Unexpectedly, they were killed by the son-in-law of the King Mu Fort one by one. As soon as the news spread, the entire Tianfeng Sea area fell into dead silence. No one had expected that the battle that had already been decided would undergo such a shocking reversal. After the truth of what happened in Tianfeng City that night was learned by the spies planted by many forces, the world was in an uproar. The Seven Mysteries Mansion Supreme Elder, a pseudo-Emperor Almighty, Li Fenghan, had descended, but he was still killed by Shi Qianhan in a domineering manner. Not only was the new son-in-law of the King Mu Fort a grade 2 mystic master, he was also a pseudo-Emperor stage Almighty. This news was like a bolt of lightning that shook the heavens and the earth. It shook the entire Tianfeng Sea area, and it did not dissipate for a long time. Countless forces were shocked. The son-in-law of the King Mu Fort, Shi Qianhan, is actually a pseudo-Emperor Almighty. That was a pseudo-emperor. Not only was his combat strength close to that of a god, his status was also extremely respected. Even in the entire Great Li dynasty, a pseudo-emperor could enjoy the privilege of not bowing to the king or obeying orders. What made their scalps tingle was that the Seven Mysteries Mansion Supreme Elder, Li Fenghan, a pseudo-emperor Almighty, had died in Yi Chen's hands. This thought flashed through someone's mind subconsciously. It can't be fake, right? Why do I find it hard to believe? However, before he could speak, another piece of heavy news had once again stirred up a storm. The son-in-law of the King Mu Fort, Shi Qianhan, had charged into the Seven Mysteries Mansion alone, domineeringly killed the 6 elders of the Seven Mysteries Mansion, and killed the mansion master, Li Kanglin, with a single slash. The overlord of the Heaven Wind Sea region, the Seven Mysteries Mansion, had been destroyed. We found a treasure. The King Mu Fort has really found a treasure this time. They actually have such a heaven-defying son-in-law. From today onwards, no one in the entire Tianfeng Sea area will be able to threaten Shi Qianhan, and the King Mu Fort will become a #1 power in the Tianfeng Sea area. Countless people were shocked, but they were also filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred for the King Mu Fort. All the forces gave their own orders. Without my orders, no one is allowed to provoke the King Mu Fort. If anyone disobeys, they will be killed without mercy, and their entire family will be executed. Quick, prepare a generous gift, and follow me to Tianfeng City. Now that the Seven Mysteries Mansion and a few other great forces have been destroyed, the forces in the Tianfeng Sea area have been reshuffled. We must seize this opportunity. In a luxurious capital city about 30,000 kilometers away from the Tianfeng Sea area was the capital of the Great Li dynasty. In the depths of the palace, a middle-aged man wearing a dragon robe and a purple gold crown sat on the dragon throne. He looked down at the person kneeling below him indifferently. "Is the news true? Your Majesty, the news was obtained by many spies from the Blackwater platform. It's true. I dare to guarantee it with my head." The man kowtowed and said at the end of his sentence, "Your Majesty, Situ Yun is an important rank, 5 member of the Great Li dynasty. If the king Mu Fort dares to kill Situ Yun, it's equivalent to rebellion. Should we mobilize the consecration hall? Pass down my decree." The city governor of Tianfeng City, Situ Yun, colluded with the northern barbarians and betrayed the country. Fortunately, the King Mu Fort discovered him in time and killed him. I hereby add King Mu as a first-class loyal and brave marquis and reward him with 10,000 taels of gold. The man on the dragon throne had a gloomy expression. The moment he said that, the person kneeling on the ground was shocked. He raised his head abruptly and looked at the former in disbelief. "Your Majesty, an abandoned city god temple in the capital of the Great Li dynasty. Speaking of which, after Shi Qianhan killed a few venerable stage powerhouses with a flick of his finger, the Seven Mysteries Mansion Supreme Elder was forced to come out of closed-door cultivation. Do you know what a Supreme Elder is?" Countless beggars gathered in the dilapidated temple. As they warmed themselves by the fire, they quietly listened to an old beggar brag. When the crowd saw that he had suddenly stopped, they could not help but curse. "Old Wu, what's a Supreme Elder? Hurry up and tell us. We're dying of anxiety." The old beggar called Old Wu smacked his lips and said as if he was pointing at something, "Sigh, when I get old, my mouth gets dry after just a few words." A beggar immediately handed over a dirty wine pot. "You're thirsty, aren't you? Come, come, I have a pot of Shadaozi here. I brought it from the drunken Red House today. There are still 2 mouthfuls left." Beggar Wu took the pot of wine. He did not mind that it was dirty and drank it in one gulp. He wiped his mouth and said, "The so-called Supreme Elder is the most powerful person in a sect. It's said that the Supreme Elder of the Seven Mysteries Mansion is a pseudo-emperor stage old monster." Everyone listened attentively to the other party's bragging, and they even cheered when they heard the exciting parts. At the entrance of the dilapidated temple sat an old man with ragged clothes and disheveled hair. He was around 60 to 70 years old, and he was considered old among beggars. After the old man heard everything that old man, surnamed Wu, said, a glint flashed across his turbid eyes. "Shi Qianhan? Is it that silly brat who betrayed his sect for a female corpse? Has this brat overcome his inner demon and stepped into the pseudo-emperor stage? Looks like I'll have to make a trip to Tianfeng City myself." While the outside world was in an uproar over Yi Chen's achievements, Yi Chen arrived at the Spirit Fog Island again at night. According to his previous memory, he stepped through the air and arrived at the southeast corner of the highest peak of the Spirit Fog Island. The formation here had long been removed, and there were still traces of outsiders' auras nearby. "Damn, he's even faster than me. Are you trying to steal my beard?" Yi Chen smirked coldly and took a step in. In the next moment, he heard the sound of a fierce battle coming from inside, accompanied by the roars of beasts from time to time. "Kill this bastard. Aya, you two are too stupid." Chapter 779. On top of the pool, a strong fragrance permeated the air. 3 black shadows were fighting intensely. 2 of them were the 2 giant loaches that Yi Chen had subdued last time. The other figure was an old man in a black robe. His face was covered in countless ugly age spots. Terrifying, mysterious energy surged from his body as he formed seals with both hands to suppress the 2 giant loaches. "Evil creatures, I've already said that you and I are here for this water lily. As long as you don't stop me, I'm willing to share half of the mutant fruit in the water lily with you." At this moment, he was furious. In his early years, he had accidentally obtained a pill formula that could increase the aptitude of a mystic master. However, the pill formula lacked a main ingredient. For this, he had gone through a lot of hardships and finally found it on the Spirit Fog Island in Tianfeng City. Therefore, he had deliberately befriended Situ Yun and his son, who were in charge of the Spirit Fog Island. He had waited for the Earth Immortal fruit to ripen today, but he had encountered this pair of guardian spiritual beasts. They seemed to be on drugs and refused to let him take the Earth Immortal fruit. Not even a discussion. Roar. Facing his compromise, The two giant loaches roared in unison and frantically urged their bodies to break the formation he had set up. The old man snorted coldly, and a ruthless expression flashed across his face. Since you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, don't blame me for being ruthless. At the next moment, he suddenly bit his finger, and a line of blood shot into the sky. Following that, he stretched out his hand and grabbed. The line of blood suddenly expanded, turning into a large net that enveloped the two giant loaches. A childish female voice immediately sounded from the water lily. "Two idiots, get out of the way." The old man smirked coldly. "I didn't hesitate to use my mysterious energy to condense the azure dragon blood net. If I let you dodge it, I wouldn't be a grade 3 mystic master." Just as the big net was about to catch the two giant loaches, a loud sound was heard and it exploded. Bleck! The black-robed old man spat a mouthful of blood and looked around in shock. "Who is it?" At the next moment, an extremely skinny figure slowly entered his line of sight. The old man's expression changed when he saw Yi Chun. "Why are you here?" At that moment, a storm surged in his heart. It could be said that he knew about the Seven Mysteries Mansion and Situ Yin teaming up to destroy the King Mu Fort, but he did not follow them. Initially, they thought that the King Mu Fort would be doomed. Never did they expect Yi Chun to be a pseudo-Emperor stage powerhouse. Not only did he destroy the 4 great forces, he even killed the Seven Mysteries Mansion's supreme elder. Therefore, when he heard the news, he was shocked to death. He rushed to the Spirit Fog Island overnight to take the Earth Immortal Fruit in advance. He did not expect Yi Chun to come for the Earth Immortal Fruit too. An incomparably aggrieved voice came from the water lily. "Big scoundrel, you're finally here." The two blockheads were beaten so badly by this scoundrel. Hearing those words, the black-robed old man's expression changed. He cried bitterly in his heart and hurriedly said, "Senior, this is a misunderstanding." Yi Chun did not wait for him to finish. He snorted coldly and slashed at him with his fingers. He did not give him a chance to explain at all. The black-robed old man was shocked. He could no longer care about the Earth Immortal Fruit. He immediately bit the tip of his tongue and formed a seal with both hands. He turned into a bloody shadow and charged into the distance. He knew very well that Yi Chun could even kill Li Fenghan, the Seven Mysteries Mansion's supreme elder, let alone a grade 3 mystic master like him. Yi Chun stood far away and smirked in disdain. He moved to his side and slapped the man's head, turning him into a bloody mist. His series of direct and efficient methods completely frightened the water lily and the two giant loaches. "Come with me." Yi Chun turned around and looked at the water lily. His gaze was focused on the golden fruit inside the water lily. Subsequently, he grabbed through the air, and the golden fruit flew out of the water lily. A palm-sized jade bottle appeared. The Earth Immortal Fruit shot into the jade bottle accurately. Yi Chun stuck a spirit sealing talisman on it casually. The Earth Immortal Fruit was the root of the earth. The preservation method was rather special. It had to be stored in a jade bottle. Otherwise, its spirituality would drain very quickly. Once its spirituality was completely drained, it would lose its effect. The water lily that had lost its Earth Immortal Fruit trembled and said timidly, "Big bad guy, I'll die if I leave the water. How can I go with you?" After witnessing Yi Chun's ruthless methods, she completely gave up on resisting. She was afraid that she would end up like the black-robed old man. Yi Chun smiled lightly. "It's very simple. I'll seal you first. I'll remove the seal for you when we get back." With that, he flicked his finger and a spirit talisman shot at the water lily. With a flash of light, the water lily rapidly shrank. In the end, it turned into a ray of dark light and entered the spirit talisman. The water lily was the root of the Earth Immortal Fruit. The reason why he wanted to take it away was because he wanted to see if he could raise it. That way, he would not have to go through so much trouble to find the Earth Immortal Fruit in the future. As for whether he could raise it or not, he was not worried. After all, he had a heaven-defying item like the Immortal Drift Bottle. As for you guys, Yi Chun lifted his head to look at the two giant loaches Shrink yourself for now and follow me. He did have a storage ring, but it could only store inanimate objects. He could not store living things unless he refined a myriad beast pouch. As soon as he said that, the two giant loaches shrunk to the size of a strand of hair and hung above Yi Chen's head. Ordinary people would not be able to tell anything unusual. Yi Chen turned around and left after he was done. Young master is back. As soon as Yi Chen returned to the King Mu fort, the two guards guarding the door immediately stood up respectfully. They looked extremely fanatical. It could be said that Yi Chen's status in the King Mu fort was not inferior to King Mu and Mu Kaiwei at all. It was because Yi Chen was the King Mu fort's savior. Currently, in the entire Tianfeng region, the most famous person was none other than Shi Qianan. Yi Chen looked at the countless carriages parked at the entrance and took a look at the bustling fort. He frowned and said, "Why is it so noisy?" One of the guards immediately said, "Young master, you might not know this, but ever since you destroyed the Seven Mysteries Mansion, countless people have been trying to befriend our King Mu fort. They even want to befriend you. I see." Yi Chen could not help but laugh in surprise. He subsequently walked in. He did not alarm anyone because he was not interested in the prosperous scene of the King Mu fort. In the side courtyard of the King Mu fort, Yi Chen stopped on a quiet path. He lifted his head to look at the vast night sky, and a smile appeared on his face. Now that I've obtained the Earth Immortal Fruit, it's time to consider returning to Earth. After all, this was a foreign country. Only Earth, China, Tianan, and Lin City were his true home. He still had his parents, wife, daughter, and friends there. Chapter 780. The next morning, in the King Mu fort, Yi Chen sat in the room that King Mu had given him. He silently calculated his gains and losses after setting up a barrier. This time, Xiao Chun had made a move to destroy Heavenly Wind City's city lord's residence, Evil Men's Valley, and the Seven Mysteries Mansion. He had gained a lot, at least 100 kinds of spirit herbs. The Seven Mysteries Mansion's treasure trove had contributed the most. If I want to successfully refine the chaotic mending pill, I need to be at least at the golden core stage. If I don't have enough magic power, I will only waste the ingredients. And now, I am only at the peak of the middle stage of foundation establishment. If I want to recover to the golden core stage, the amount of spiritual qi I need is not small. Unless I can refine the life enhancement pill, maybe I can recover to the golden core stage. Yi Chen sat with his legs crossed. His eyes flickered a few times. Subsequently, over 10 spiritual medicines shot out of his storage ring with a thought. A stream of true fire shot out from his mouth and enveloped the dozen or so spiritual herbs. Under his control, these spiritual herbs were first smelted into medicinal liquid, then purified into powder, and finally condensed into pills an hour later. Yi Chen opened his eyes slowly. He looked at the dozen or so life enhancement pills floating before him in satisfaction. He looked rather pained. In order to refine these 10 or so life-enhancing pills, almost half of the elixirs were used up. It could only be said that the higher the grade of the elixir, the more medicinal ingredients needed to be consumed. Fortunately, he succeeded. Without hesitation, he immediately picked up a pill and swallowed it. Then he closed his eyes slightly and quickly digested the spiritual power of the New Year enhancement pill. Time passed unknowingly. King Mu, who had finally sent the guests away, heaved a long sigh of relief. Beside him, Mu Kaiwei frowned and said, "Father, these people plan to support you as the alliance master of all the forces in the Tianfeng area. Why didn't you agree earlier?" "It's not that simple." King Mu sighed softly and said with a bitter smile, "The reason why these people are currying favor with my King Mu fort is purely because of Senior Shi." At this point, his expression was extremely complicated. Logically speaking, Yi Chen was his son-in-law in name. He should call Yi Chen Qianhan. However, he knew that the marriage between Yi Chen and Mu Kaiwei was just a deal. Therefore, he dared not be arrogant in front of Yi Chen. At this point, he looked at Mu Kaiwei with a complicated expression. "Do you think someone like him will stay in the King Mu fort for long?" Mu Kaiwei's delicate body stiffened slightly as she lowered her pretty face. For some reason, she suddenly felt a hint of disappointment in her heart. King Mu saw this and sighed. Our King Mu fort can't keep him, and neither can the Tianfeng Sea area. He won't stay for our King Mu fort. After all, he's already helped us a lot. He felt a little regretful at that moment. If his daughter could move Yi Qin's heart, it might be an opportunity for the King Mu fort. However, in the end, it was just wishful thinking. As he was speaking, a commotion came from outside. King Mu's expression darkened, and he immediately shouted, "What happened?" A guard from the King Mu fort walked in quickly and said in a panic, "Fort Master, bad news. There's a phenomenon in the sky above the King Mu fort." "What?" King Mu and Mu Siwei's expressions changed instantly. They quickly rushed out, and they could not help but be stunned by the scene before them. The originally cloudless blue sky suddenly changed color. Dark clouds were rapidly approaching the King Mu fort, and in the end, the sky above the King Mu fort fell into darkness. Rumble, a muffled thunder exploded in the sky above the King Mu fort, followed by dense silver lightning that danced wantonly like silver snakes. At the same time, a huge vortex appeared within a 5-kilometer radius of the King Mu fort. The vortex absorbed all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within a radius of several dozen kilometers. Countless people from the King Mu fort ran out one after another. They looked at the scene in fear. What happened? Mu Siwei's pretty face changed. "Father, this is the heavenly tribulation." King Mu seemed to have thought of something, and a hint of shock appeared on his face. "This is the heavenly tribulation to become an emperor. Looks like Senior Sure is going to become an emperor." As his voice fell, the surroundings were dead silent, and everyone's mouths were wide open. Emperor? Was the young master going to become an emperor? At the same time, more than half of the people in Tianfeng City sensed this strange scene. An almighty sucked in a breath of air and cried out in shock, "This is the emperor tribulation. Someone in our Tianfeng Sea area is going to become an emperor." Whoosh! Countless people were in an uproar. One had to know that there had never been an emperor stage powerhouse in the entire Tianfeng Sea area for hundreds of years. Just the Seven Mysteries Mansion Supreme Elder, Li Fenghan, who was a pseudo-emperor stage powerhouse, could be considered the #1 in the Tianfeng Sea area. Someone with sharp eyes immediately exclaimed, "It's in the direction of the King Mu fort. Looks like the young master of the King Mu fort is going to become an emperor. What a monster! This kid is going to become an emperor at such a young age. I wonder if this person can survive the emperor tribulation." For a moment, countless people stared blankly at the increasingly oppressive phenomenon in the sky. Their eyes were filled with shock and envy. Emperor stage powerhouse. Since ancient times, countless cultivators had dreamed of becoming an emperor, but they all died halfway. Now, they were about to witness the birth of an emperor stage powerhouse. Outside the King Mu fort, Mu Siwei's ears buzzed from King Mu's words. Seeing that the thunderclouds in the sky were getting more and more intense, she could not help but ask, "Father, will something happen to Qianan? This is something he has to experience. Once he survives it, he'll be an emperor. No matter how concerned we are, there's nothing we can do." King Mu sighed softly before shouting to the people around him, "Everyone, retreat a kilometer and protect the young master. If anyone dares to come within a kilometer of the King Mu fort, kill them without mercy." Everyone replied in unison, "Yes." After everyone retreated a kilometer away, the clouds circling above the King Mu fort became thicker and thicker, as if the entire sky was about to collapse. Puffed! Under everyone's shocked gazes, a lightning tribulation that was as thick as a water bucket suddenly descended from the clouds. The lightning tribulation struck the King Mu fort at an astonishing speed with a terrifying aura. Wherever the lightning tribulation passed, the clouds were forcefully torn apart, forming a vacuum zone that was nearly 10,000 meters wide. Under such heavenly might, everyone felt a shiver from the bottom of their hearts, and even their souls were trembling. Mu Siwei clenched her fingers tightly and bit her lips as she looked in the direction of the King Mu fort worriedly. Nothing can happen to you. Just as the lightning tribulation was about to descend on the King Mu fort, an extremely indifferent voice sounded. How dare mere 39 heavenly tribulation act so impudently in front of me? At the next moment, a golden body that was over 30 meters tall suddenly rose into the sky from the King Mu fort. The golden body brazenly faced the lightning tribulation and laughed maniacally. It pointed at the sky and shouted, "Disperse." Chapter 781. Boom! With a roar, the lightning tribulation that was as thick as a water bucket seemed to have been forcefully torn apart by a pair of invisible hands, and it actually disappeared into thin air. At that moment, the dark clouds that had originally enveloped the sky above the King Mu fort also dispersed in all directions. Not long after, the entire sky returned to its clear state. Even though King Mu thought that he was knowledgeable, he could not help but be dumbfounded at this moment. Such a terrifying heavenly tribulation was actually dispersed with a single shout. The 30-meter-tall golden body also shrunk. In the end, under everyone's gaze, it turned into a skinny figure. Jur danced in joy. "It's young master, it's young master. It's really young master. He's fine." In other words, young master has become an emperor. Countless people were extremely excited. To be able to see one of their own become an emperor in their lifetime was enough for them to brag to their juniors for the rest of their lives. Mu Kaiwei stared blankly at the figure in the distance. The figure was dressed in black, and his long black hair fluttered in the wind. His rather ordinary facial features were suffused with a faint purple divine might at this moment. An indescribable pressure surged in all directions like a tide. His pitch-black eyes were as deep as the boundless night sky, causing one to be mesmerized by them and fall into their trap. In the sky, Yi Chun sensed the majestic power fluctuations in his body. His gaze was focused on the origin core the size of a pigeon's egg in his dantian. A smile appeared at the corner of his lips. "I've finally recovered to golden core. Now that Li Feng Han, the pseudo-emperor, encounters me again, I only need one palm to kill him." A smile appeared at the corner of Yi Chen's lips as he mumbled, "My combat strength can fight a martial emperor now. The only flaw is that the almighty killer sword is broken. I need to refine another magic weapon." At this moment, several figures rushed over. King Mu was the first to cup his fists and said, "Congratulations, Senior Sure, for successfully overcoming the Emperor Tribulation and stepping into the martial Emperor stage." Emperor Tribulation? Yi Chen was stunned at first when he heard that. Subsequently, he smiled calmly. He knew that King Mu had misunderstood. It was the 39 heavenly tribulation that a foundation-building cultivator had to go through to Golden Core. There were a total of 3 lightning strikes. However, when the first strike struck, Yi Chun dispersed the tribulation cloud with a single word. Therefore, the other 2 did not strike. However, he did not explain. Instead, he said, "Both of you, father and daughter, come to my room." In the next moment, his body disappeared on the spot. After King Mu and Mu Kaiwei entered the room, Yi Chen lifted his head to look at them and said directly, "I believe you guys have guessed that I'm leaving." King Mu nodded slightly and secretly sighed. On the other hand, when Mu Kaiwei heard this, her delicate body slightly stiffened. Her pretty face drooped, and after a moment of silence, she faintly said, "When are we leaving?" "Tomorrow, at the latest." Yi Chen chuckled softly and subsequently looked at the 2 of them. "However, I have many questions before I leave. I need you and your daughter to answer them for me." King Mu said, "Senior Sure, feel free to speak." A book appeared in Yi Chen's hand immediately. It was the legend of mountains and seas that he had obtained on the first floor of the King Mu Fort's library. He asked slowly, "Who wrote this?" King Mu took a look, and his expression changed. "Where did Senior Sure get this from?" "Your King Mu Fort's library." Hearing that, King Mu closed his eyes and said regretfully, "I ordered someone to destroy this book a long time ago. I didn't expect that I would still miss something." As if sensing Yi Chen's confusion, he forced a smile and said, "Senior Sure, you might not know this, but this is a forbidden book in the Great Li dynasty. More than 100,000 people have died for it. It's not an exaggeration to say that heads are rolling. Yi Chen frowned. Forbidden book? That's right. King Mu nodded and said, 20 years ago, when the Great Li dynasty's king was seriously ill, an old man with the surname Shao appeared out of nowhere and cured the king's illness. The king asked him what reward he wanted, but he didn't expect that this person didn't want money or power. He only asked for a position in the Hamlin Academy to be in charge of looking after the royal family's books. Surname Shao? Yi Chen's eyes narrowed when he heard that. King Mu continued, this person reads books in the Hamlin Academy all day long. When everyone ignored his existence, I didn't expect him to write an extremely absurd book one day. He said that there's a world outside the ancient desolate realm called the Celestial Burial Planet. The shock in Yi Chen's heart grew stronger. Continue. The Great Li dynasty attaches great importance to scholars and cultural freedom. Such a conjecture might be absurd, but logically speaking, it's normal. King Mu said slowly. However, for some reason, the king was suddenly enraged and sent people to capture that person. Unexpectedly, that person ran away, and the king ordered the burning of this book. However, this book was widely circulated at that time. For this reason, the king sent tens of thousands of troops to search for this book. For this reason, more than 100,000 heads fell to the ground. From then on, no one dared to touch this taboo. Yi Chen secretly frowned and said, in other words, you guys don't know why the king of the Great Li dynasty ordered the burning of this book? I don't know. I only know that this book was spread to the territories of other dynasties. The kings of the other dynasties were also enraged and castrated this past with iron and blood. Yi Chen said, what about the person who wrote this book back then? King Mu pondered for a few seconds before saying, this person mysteriously disappeared at that time. It was as if he had evaporated from the world. After 20 years, everyone gradually forgot about him. Yi Chen frowned when he heard that. He was already certain that the person who wrote this book was Xiao Bai, because Xiao Bai had stepped onto the ghost ship 20 years ago. This person seemed to have a relationship with the owner of the ghost ship. As for how he ended up in the ancient desolate realm, how he treated the king of the Great Li dynasty, and why he was hunted down, Yi Chen could not figure it out no matter how hard he racked his brains. King Mu took a good look at him and said hesitantly, Senior Sure, why do you care so much about this book? Yi Chen said without changing his expression, I don't really care. It's just that the content of the book is ridiculous, but it's quite interesting. That's why I'm interested in the person who wrote it. With that, he flicked his finger and 3 white jade pendants shot towards King Mu. The jade pendants emitted a rich pill fragrance. King Mu was confused. What's this? Yi Chen smiled lightly. These are medicinal pills that I refine myself. One of them is a creation pill that can help you step into the pseudo-emperor stage. What? King Mu was stunned at first, then he was overjoyed. He said in disbelief, it can help me step into the pseudo-emperor stage. Of course. Yi Chen smiled non-committally. All in all, your King Mu Ford has attracted a lot of attention because of me. It's fine if I'm here, but if I'm not, it'll inevitably bring a lot of instability to you guys. This creation pill can be considered my compensation to you. Before King Mu could calm down, Yi Chen threw another bombshell. As for the other 2 bottles, they're your so-called golden dragon pills. They can help your King Mu Fort's innate stage martial artist step into the venerable stage. Yi Chen waved and said, all right, you guys may leave. King Mu could only suppress the excitement in him and put away the medicinal pills. He walked out with Mu Kai Wei, who had a complicated expression on her face. After the 2 of them left, Yi Chen rubbed his chin and thought to himself, next, I'll think of a way to leave the ancient desolate realm. He took out the forbidden ancient desolate realm tablet again and started studying it. To his surprise, perhaps it was because he had recovered to the golden core stage and his divine consciousness had skyrocketed, he actually discovered something new this time. P.S. Here you go. Please give me monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 782. Yi Chen caressed the surface of the forbidden ancient desolate realm tablet gently. His vast divine consciousness slowly seeped in. This time, he finally discovered something. This was because the moment his divine sense touched the surface of the tablet, he felt a strong suction force. His vision became dizzy, as if he was falling from an endless height. When his vision was restored, he saw a narrow space surrounded by several sealed stone walls. Yi Qin's eyes focused. Is this the void inside the forbidden ancient desolate realm tablet? As he entered, the four walls began to blur, like ripples on water. After a while, the four walls began to shine brightly, and tiny spots of light gradually appeared on them. The speck of light grew larger and larger, and in the end, it actually transformed into countless strange characters that were powerful and beautiful. The characters were dense and well-proportioned, and the atmosphere was solemn. Is this the bell cauldron inscription of the pre-Qin dynasty? Yi Qin's heart skipped a beat when he saw that. The so-called pre-Qin period generally referred to Xia, Shang, Zhou, and the Spring and Autumn Warring States period. The Xia dynasty used the Xia seal script. The Shang dynasty used the Oracle Bone script. The Zhou dynasty's Western Zhou dynasty used the Zhongding script, also known as the Jin script, and the Eastern Zhou dynasty used it as seal script. It was only after the Qin dynasty unified the 6 states that everything was unified, including weights and measures, as well as the written language. The written language was in Xiaozhuan. Among them, the bell cauldron script was engraved on the bronze. What surprised him was that the bell cauldron script of the Western Zhou dynasty actually existed in the forbidden ancient desolate realm tablet. Yi Qin secretly frowned as his eyes flickered. Could it be that the person who created this forbidden ancient desolate realm tablet was from the Western Zhou dynasty? Could it be that pre-Qin Qi practitioners really exist on Earth? Speaking of pre-Qin Qi practitioners, one had to think of Taoism. According to the records, Taoism was initially formed in ancient times by the Yellow Emperor Xinyuan. It was officially established in the last years of the Eastern Han Dynasty by the celestial master Zhongling, who established the 5 pecks of rice sect. At the beginning of the sect, the Yellow Emperor was the first ancestor, Laozi was the Taoist ancestor, and Zhongling was the founder. However, before the Qin dynasty, it was said that those who practiced Taoism were not called Taoists, but Qi cultivators. At that time, the 100 schools of thought were on the rise, and various schools of thought, such as Confucius, Mencius, legalism, Moism, and other schools of thought collectively exploded. At that time, there were people who proposed the theory of Qi refinement. They also proposed the cultivation theories of beating an ox through the air, controlling objects with one's mind, immortality, and ascension. The most typical examples were Laozi and Zhuangzhou during the Spring and Autumn Warring States period. The Tao Te Ching and the free and unfettered travel written by the two had been passed down to this day. After the unification of the Qin dynasty, these Qi practitioners were called necromancers. Later on, the first emperor even believed the words of the necromancers and sent the famous necromancer Su Fu overseas to search for the 3 great celestial mountains in search of the art of immortality. Later on, there were people who commented on Emperor Shi Huang. Although Emperor Shi Huang unified the 6 kingdoms after 6 generations of hard work, he was still the ruler who unified the 6 kingdoms and surpassed the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. If the talk of cultivating Qi to achieve immortality was really groundless, how could he easily believe it? The investiture of the gods, as everyone knew, was from before the Qin dynasty and before the Western Zhou dynasty. Whether it was the story of Neza wreaking havoc in the sea or to the conquest of the Zhou dynasty, it was full of mythical colors. Yi Qin stared at the magical light screen on the stone wall attentively. After a closer look, he discovered that there were a total of 232 words on it. The strokes were strong, and the words were thin, as if they were alive. However, he did not recognize some of the words. After all, he rarely came into contact with Zhongding script. Moreover, Zhongding script came from the Western Zhou dynasty, and there was a gap in culture. Moreover, after the Qin dynasty burned books and buried Confucians, many things were lost. Even if the experts who specialized in ancient languages were placed here, they would probably beat their chests and scratch their cheeks. When Yi Qin tried his best to identify the over 200 Zhongding script, he realized that he only recognized around 80 of them. These 80 or so words were not connected together. As for the rest, he could not figure them out no matter how hard he tried. When he finally tried his best to connect the 80 or so words together, his heart trembled. I didn't expect there to really be a preaching Shi practitioner. By analyzing the 80 or so words, he vaguely knew that this forbidden ancient desolate realm tablet was forged by a preaching Shi practitioner. To be precise, this preaching Shi practitioner lived until the end of the Qin dynasty. Otherwise, he would not have carved the words "Long live the great Qin Empire" on the forbidden ancient desolate realm tablet. This preaching Shi practitioner called Earth the celestial burial planet. Later on, due to some great change, he came to the ancient desolate realm. What excited Yi Chan the most was that the preaching Shi practitioner's method of coming here was the so-called space displacement theory. To put it bluntly, it was the teleportation formation of the cultivation world. The so-called teleportation formation was a formation that connected space and realized the long-distance teleportation of people or objects. This kind of formation was not rare in the cultivation world. Who would have thought that this preaching Shi practitioner would be able to figure it out himself? In reality, it was not that Yi Chan had never thought about using the teleportation formation. However, it was too difficult. It could even be said to be impossible. If he wanted to return to Earth through the teleportation formation, the prerequisite was that there must be a teleportation formation on Earth. It was equivalent to a fixed point. Otherwise, even if Yi Chan teleported to space through the teleportation formation, he would be like a headless fly in the spatial turbulence. He might even be teleported to other areas, such as Mars or the Moon. This preaching Shi practitioner was able to teleport from Earth to the ancient desolate realm. In other words, he must have a formation on Earth. Yi Chan could not help but feel extremely excited as he thought about it. In other words, if I find a teleportation formation that this preaching Shi practitioner left in the ancient desolate realm, I might be teleported back to Earth. Of course, this was only his good guess. There were many bad guesses too. For example, this preaching Shi practitioner had come to the ancient desolate realm by chance. Moreover, even if he had really teleported here and there was a teleportation formation on Earth that he had left behind, thousands of years had passed. The world had changed, and the teleportation formation had probably been destroyed long ago. Yi Chan got rid of the distracting thoughts in his mind. Even if there's only a sliver of hope, I have to try. Now that he had obtained the Earth immortal fruit, he could not afford to stay in the ancient desolate realm for another decade or even decades. His family on Earth could not afford to wait either. As he thought to this point, Yi Chan started studying the bell cauldron inscription on the light screen on the stone wall again. He tried his best to deduce it regardless of the consumption of his divine consciousness. It was not until that night that he walked out of his room and called King Mu and his daughter over. He asked, "Is there a place with the word ruin in its name around the Tianfeng Sea area?" King Mu and Mu Kaiwei looked at each other. "There's a word ruin in its name?" Yi Chan nodded solemnly. "That's right. This place is very important to me. Please think about it carefully." After countless deliberations and studies on the forbidden ancient desolate realm tablet, he finally figured out something from the remaining 100 or so bell cauldron inscriptions that he did not recognize. The general meaning was that the preaching Shi practitioner had walked out of some ruin and came to the ancient desolate realm. In other words, as long as he found this place with the word ruin in its name, he would have hope of returning to Earth. Chapter 783. King Mu's expression changed a few times. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and said immediately, "I remember now." Yi Chan was delighted. "Tell me." Senior sure should be referring to the ultimate ruin. King Mu asked in a probing manner first. He only explained after noticing Yi Chen's questioning gaze. The so-called ultimate land is a chaotic place in the Tianfeng Sea area. It's also known as one of the 10 most dangerous places. Yi Chen frowned. Why? Mu Kaiwei took over and said with a pale face, "Because the ultimate ruin is a spatial rift. It's filled with extremely violent gales and spatial rifts. Martial artists are too weak before these." "That's right." King Mu nodded with a solemn expression and said, It's accompanied by a terrifying suction force. Venerable stage powerhouses will be torn into countless pieces in an instant. Even martial emperors don't dare to approach it. In all these years, no one has dared to approach the ultimate ruin. He could not help but lift his head to look at Yi Chan as he spoke to this point. Why are you suddenly concerned about the ultimate ruin, Senior Sure? Even Mu Kaiwei looked at him with a puzzled expression. Yi Chan said in disappointment, I'm looking for a place with the word ruin in its name. However, the ultimate ruin that you mentioned shouldn't be what I'm looking for. However, he was certain that the Preaching Chi refinement cultivator was talking about the ultimate ruin because the ultimate ruin was filled with spatial rifts. This meant that this spatial rift could lead to other places. As for the dangers of the spatial rifts, he knew them better than anyone else. However, he did not care. After all, his physical body was incomparable to ordinary people. In the southeast corner of the Tianfeng Sea area, a place where humans and animals could not live, under the hazy night sky, Yi Chen followed the map and arrived here quietly. He stood on a weathered boulder and looked around at the desolate, desert-like surroundings. In the end, his gaze was fixed on a place in the distance where yellow sand filled the sky. There was a huge vortex there. The vortex was about 100 feet wide. At this moment, there was a terrifying suction force coming from it, crazily devouring everything that could be devoured. I believe this is the ultimate ruin. Instead of being shocked, Yi Chun was delighted. He took a step forward and dashed toward the spatial rift. As he got closer, the tearing force grew stronger. If it was an ordinary martial monarch here, he would probably not be able to hold on for a few breaths. It was no wonder that King Mu and the others were fearful when they mentioned the ultimate ruin. However, this was nothing to him. In just a few breaths, he had entered the spatial crack. What entered his eyes was boundless darkness, with no end in sight. Yi Chun cast a fireball spell and lit up the void in front of him. Various boulders and debris floated quietly in the void. Among them, there was a palace-like boulder that caught his attention. He took a deep breath and controlled his body to land on that mountain-like boulder. There were no signs of life wherever his gaze passed, only withered grass. In the middle of the boulder, there was a cave entrance sunken in. Yi Chun scanned with his divine consciousness, and joy appeared on his face immediately because he sensed spiritual energy fluctuations in the cave entrance through his divine consciousness. He walked over without hesitation and dashed into the cave entrance. What greeted his eyes was an 8-trigram formation about 1 meter in diameter. At the center of the formation was a grayish-white stone the size of a fist. It really is an ancient teleportation formation. Even though he was mentally prepared, Yi Chun could not help but feel excited when he saw the formation before him with his own eyes. He studied the array in front of him and frowned. After so many years, many parts of the array had been damaged. The spiritual stone in the middle of the array had become dull and lifeless. It was obvious that the spiritual energy within the array had been depleted. If he wanted to activate the formation, he had to inject spirit stones. Only then would he have enough energy to activate the teleportation formation. Yi Chen's expression kept changing. It's not difficult to repair the formation, but where can I find the spirit stones? Forget it. I'll think of a way when I get back. He shook his head slightly and then took out many array formation materials from his storage ring. He refined 2 sets of array formations on the spot. One was to protect the teleportation portal from being destroyed by accident, and the other was to prevent the boulder from collapsing. After returning to the King Mu fort, he immediately looked for King Mu and handed him a list of materials. I don't care what method you use. You must gather all the materials on this list for me within a day. The list was filled with materials to repair the ancient teleportation formation. All right. King Mu nodded and was about to leave. Wait. Yi Chen suddenly stopped him and asked, Do you know where to find spirit stones? I need them now. Spirit stones? King Mu was stunned. He said carefully, Senior Sure, may I ask what spirit stones are? Yi Chen explained in a different way. It's the energy stones that power formations. I'm sure you're familiar with formations, right? King Mu finally reacted. Are you talking about mystic stones, Senior Sure? Our formations are activated by mystic stones. After saying that, he took out a blue crystal the size of a pigeon's egg and introduced, "This is it." Yichen held it in his hand and felt the energy in it quietly. There was disappointment between his brows. The energy in the so-called mystic stone was too low. It could not activate the ancient teleportation formation at all. Thinking to this point, he could not help but ask, "This mystic stone is too small. Does your King Mu fort have a bigger mystic stone?" "The biggest one is only the size of an egg, and there's only one. It's something that my King Mu fort has kept for many years." King Mu smiled bitterly and said, "Senior, sure, you might not know this, but mystic stones are too rare. They usually come from mystic stone veins, and all mystic stone veins are controlled by top sections. We can only envy them. Even a grade 9 sect like the Seven Mysteries Mansion doesn't have them." Yichen's eyes flickered a few times when he heard that before saying, "Which sect closest to Tianfeng City has a mystic stone vein?" "It's the Qingzhou's giant demon sect that's thousands of kilometers away," King Mu said slowly. "The giant demon sect is the overlord of Qingzhou, and it's a grade 8 sect. The sect cultivates demonic cultivation methods, and it's said that there's an emperor stage cultivator in charge. No one dares to offend them." He took a good look at Yi Chun after saying that. He said hesitantly, "Senior, are you planning to borrow mystic stones from the giant demon sect? Forgive me for being honest, but I'm afraid they won't lend it to you." Although he did not know what use Yi Chun had for the mystic stones, he understood that mystic stones were too important to these top sections. Borrowing from them was equivalent to taking their lives. "Got it. You may leave." Yi Chun waved and revealed a smirk at the corner of his lips after watching him leave. "Who said that I'm borrowing it? I'm robbing. How can you call it borrowing when it's a cultivator? Isn't it all about fists?" Chapter 784. Late at night, the full moon hung high in the sky, and the stars shone brightly. The Qingzhou, which was thousands of kilometers away from the Tianfeng Sea area, was extremely lively because the overlord of the Qingzhou, the giant demon sect, had begun to recruit disciples. Perhaps it was because they were demonic sects, but the giant demon sect's method of recruiting disciples was especially unique. They specifically chose to recruit at night, which caused the tens of millions of people in the entire Qingzhou to move. Countless youths who were only 12 or 13 years old gathered in front of the giant demon sect's mountain gate. They stared at the dozen or so black-clothed outer sect disciples in front of them with burning eyes. Even though these people were only outer sect disciples of the giant demon sect, and their cultivation levels were only at the illuminating pulse stage, they were no different from immortals to these youths who wanted to join the giant demon sect. This was because once they joined the giant demon sect, not only would they not have to worry about food and clothing, they would also be able to cultivate profound martial arts techniques and become powerhouses who grasp power. Silence. An extremely cold voice suddenly sounded, causing the noisy youths to instantly shut their mouths. Everyone could not help but look at the person who spoke. It was a middle-aged man dressed in black with a palm-sized birthmark on his face. His gaze was as sharp as an eagle's. The middle-aged man's expression was extremely cold as he scanned the thousands of youths in front of him. A cruel smile appeared on his face. "Let me introduce myself. I'm Wu Liang, and I'm currently the outer sect deacon of the giant demon sect. I'm in charge of selecting a portion of you to enter the giant demon sect. Let me make this clear first. The giant demon sect is a demonic sect. We only recruit ruthless, cold-blooded, and heartless people. It's not too late for you to leave now if you feel that you're not suitable." After saying that, Wu Yang stopped and sized up the crowd. The crowd was silent, and no one moved. Before they came, they had heard about the giant demon sect style. They did not want kind and upright people, nor did they want soft-hearted people. "Very good." Wu Yang chuckled and gave the person beside him a look. Not long after, that person brought a lot of things. There were more than 10 boxes of gold alone, and there were even dozens of gorgeously dressed women. Many people's eyes turned green as they stared at those things. Their gazes were focused on the dozens of women. "All of you can see that in front of me is gold, land deeds, women, and all kinds of things that you've been pursuing your entire life. After Wu Liang saw their reactions, he said with a faint smile, "These things belong to some of you. These people will stand out from the assessment and become disciples of my giant demon sect. Oh my God, gold, land, deeds, and women. Is this for real? Did I hear that right? Is the giant demon sect that rich?" The thousands of youths who were originally extremely quiet immediately burst into an uproar. Their faces were filled with excitement and desire. A fat man exclaimed, "Is the giant demon sect that rich? Furthermore, they're so high profile. Could it be that they're not afraid of being robbed?" His words were neither loud nor soft, but Wu Liang heard them clearly. Wu Liang immediately pointed a finger. "You come out." The little fatty was so scared that he almost fainted. His legs and stomach trembled as he walked out. With a pale face, he said, "Deacon Wu, I was just joking. Repeat what you just said." Wu Liang chuckled. Seeing that the little fatty did not dare to say anything, his gaze turned cold. "I'll let you say it again. Otherwise, I'll kill you right now." The little fatty shook the fat on his face and revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. "Is the giant demon sect that rich? Furthermore, they're so high profile. Aren't they afraid of being robbed?" After saying that, he closed his eyes in despair. However, Wu Liang did not get angry. Instead, he smiled and said, "You want to rob my giant demon sect? Why don't you go out and ask around? My giant demon sect is like the local tyrant in the entire Qingzhou. Who would dare to rob us?" As his voice fell, an extremely terrifying pressure suddenly descended from the sky. Under this pressure, everyone could not help but kneel on the ground. Even he was no exception. Under everyone's dumbfounded expressions, a black-clothed, skinny man with a mask on his face descended from the sky. After the man landed, he dispersed his pressure. He first sized up everyone before asking, "May I ask if this is the giant demon sect?" The surroundings were silent, and no one dared to speak. At the critical moment, Wu Liang struggled up from the ground and took 2 steps forward with an apologetic smile. He nodded and bowed. "Senior, I am..." The man's gaze turned cold. "Let me ask you, is this the giant demon sect?" At that moment, Wu Liang felt a mountain-like pressure coming at him. His heart was filled with fear. This person must be an innate realm or a venerable realm powerhouse. He shuddered and immediately said weakly, "Senior, this is the giant demon sect. May I know who you are?" The man ignored him. Instead, he took a step towards the giant demon sect, as if he wanted to barge into the sect. The people in charge of guarding the door were 2 innate powerhouses. The 2 of them immediately shouted, "Stop! This is the giant demon sect. How dare you?" The man threw out 2 words lightly, "Robbery." The 2 disciples guarding the door were stunned. What? They were not the only ones. Even Wu Liang and the thousands of youths in the distance were stunned. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Did they hear wrongly? Someone really dared to rob the giant demon sect? Bang! Before they could react, the man waved his sleeve, and the 2 innate realm disciples in charge of guarding the sect were sent flying. Someone immediately shouted, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" The young man did not stop and walked into the giant demon sect step by step. Not long after, several powerful auras rushed over. The leader was a white-haired old man. "Who dares to offend our giant demon sect?" Someone recognized him at a glance and immediately gasped. "It's Elder Shing. That's a venerable realm powerhouse. I didn't expect that even he would be alarmed." Wu Yang sneered. "That guy's done for, right?" However, in the next moment, the man swung his palm. The white-haired old man and the other venerable realm powerhouses immediately exploded into a bloody mist. This. Wu Yang and the rest were shocked. Even Elder Shing, who was a venerable realm powerhouse, was killed by a single slap? "I already said that it's a robbery, not a forceful charge." The man muttered and continued walking towards the giant demon sect's treasure vault. With the death of the white-haired old man, the entire giant demon sect was alarmed. For a moment, the entire giant demon sect was in chaos. Along the way, many powerhouses attacked the man, but they were all killed with a single slap. The giant demon sect master, Tion Biming, who rushed over after hearing the news, his pupils constricted when he saw the man's massacre. He immediately cupped his fists and said, "May I know your name, senior? Why are you attacking our giant demon sect?" Chapter 785. Martial Emperor. The other party must be a martial emperor. At the same time, a storm surged in his heart, so he did not dare to attack the other party again. Instead, he wanted to persuade him. The man stood against the wind and looked at him indifferently. "Where are the mystic stones of your giant demon sect? I want to rob you." Tion Biming's face twitched when he heard such arrogant words. "Senior, our giant demon sect has an emperor stage cultivator guarding it. Aren't you afraid of triggering a war between the emperor stage cultivators by acting so arrogantly?" Noisy. The man snorted coldly and headed straight for the giant demon sect's treasure vault. He could already feel the energy fluctuations of the mystic stones. Impudent. Tion Biming was completely enraged. Elders set up the 7-demon absolute kill formation and kill this person. As soon as he finished speaking, 7 figures immediately appeared behind him. Each of them had the aura of a pseudo-emperor stage cultivator. From this, it could be seen that the giant demon sect foundation was not something the 7 Mysteries Mansion could compare to. Get lost. The man clenched his fist, and a pseudo-emperor stage elder was immediately sucked over by him. Then he was completely crushed. The other party did not even have the time to resist. What? Seeing this scene, the upper echelons of the giant demon sect, including Tion Biming, were shocked. One had to know that that was a pseudo-emperor stage cultivator. Even though the giant demon sect was a grade 8 sect, there were only 7 of them. Now, one of them had been killed by the other party in an instant. Tion Biming immediately reacted and exclaimed, Quickly inform the Patriarch. Tell him that the giant demon sect's enemy is attacking. Only he can save us when he comes out of seclusion." As soon as he finished speaking, someone immediately left. The man did not stop them. As if he did not see anything, he directly rushed into the treasure vault. The giant demon sect's treasure vault had a protective formation, but it was easily broken by the man. Tion Biming followed from afar. When he saw the man robbing everything in the treasure vault, his heart was bleeding. F***CK. Where did this weirdo come from? In the entire Qingzhou and the entire ancient desolate realm, such a thing had never happened before. I finally found it. After the man broke through the last formation, he fixed his gaze on the profound stone vein that was more than 3 meters wide. Then, he waved his hand, and under Tion Biming's twitching gaze, he took away the profound stone vein. "So poor." A dissatisfied voice rang out. Tion Biming's face stiffened completely because he could no longer move. These were the mystic stones that the giant demon sect had accumulated for hundreds of years. It was one thing for the other party to forcefully snatch them away, but the other party actually thought that it was too little. At that moment, an incomparably old voice was heard. "Who are you? How dare you rob my giant demon sect?" The sky above suddenly distorted. A figure wrapped in a monstrous, murderous aura slowly walked out from within. Then he stood in the air, faintly emitting a pressure that caused the entire giant demon sect to suffocate. "Patriarch! That's the Patriarch! The Patriarch of my giant demon sect has finally come out. That robber is dead for sure. Ancestor's magic power is boundless, and he has remarkable abilities." At that moment, everyone from the giant demon sect knelt down. They looked at the figure in the sky with reverence and fanaticism. Tion Biming roared hoarsely, "Patriarch, this is the person who barged into my giant demon sect, and he even stole the treasure that my giant demon sect has kept for hundreds of years." At that moment, he suddenly wanted to cry. It had always been the giant demon sect robbing others. When had they ever been robbed? If word of this got out, would the giant demon sect still have any face left? The old man in the sky was furious. "Be ****, I don't care who you are. Since you dare to rob my giant demon sect, then stay." At the next moment, he stretched out his 5 fingers, and 5 black beams of light shot out from his fingertips. The beams of light whistled and turned into an incomparably terrifying cage that covered the man on the ground. The fluctuations emitted from it made one's heart palpitate. It was as if it was the aura of the power of heaven and earth, causing one's heart to tremble and unable to resist. "Will you take care of my meals if I stay?" In the face of such an attack, the man smiled faintly. His gaze shot straight into the sky, and two golden flames appeared in his pupils. At first, the flames were only the size of wheat, but in the blink of an eye, they rapidly grew. They turned into two golden pillars of light that surged out in all directions, piercing through the heavens and earth. As soon as the cage formed by the 5 black beams of light touched the golden pillars of light, it was instantly destroyed. It turned into a terrifying gust of wind that swept towards the sky. Oh no! Facing the 2 golden pillars of light that were charging at him, the expression of the figure in the sky changed. He hurriedly waved his hand, and, as the space surged, he seemed to want to escape. However, his reaction was still a little too slow. After being brushed by the corner of a golden pillar of light, a wisp of flame immediately spread from his sleeve. The figure roared angrily and raised his hand to summon a hurricane. Only then did he extinguish the flames on his body. Even so, his eyebrows and long beard were still burned. "Who exactly are you? Do you dare to tell me your name?" "I will never change my name. I am Zhao Ritian." After the man let out a wild laugh, he swaggered away under everyone's horrified gazes, leaving behind a stunned crowd. A thunderous roar sounded in the air. "Zhao Ritian? I'll remember this. If I don't kill you, I'm not human." Not long after, the entire Qingzhou was in an uproar. The giant demon sect was robbed by a mysterious powerhouse. More than 10 elders died, and there was even a pseudo-emperor stage powerhouse. In the end, the patriarch of the giant demon sect, a martial emperor, was forced to make a move, but he still failed to make the other party stay. Holy sh*t, what an awesome person. He's too arrogant, too arrogant. Who exactly is this Zhao Ritian? Why have I never heard of such a powerhouse in Qingzhou? Zhao Ritian, just the name alone, is already extremely domineering. He even dares to defy the heavens. What else does he not dare to do? That night, the entire Qingzhou was discussing this matter. In the end, it was the giant demon sect that suppressed the news. Even so, it still spread to other territories. As a result, the sects of other provinces activated their protective formations and prepared for battle, afraid that this mysterious powerhouse called Zhao Ritian would rob them. When King Mu heard the news, his expression could be said to be extremely interesting. He had just mentioned the giant demon sect to Yi Chun, and the giant demon sect was robbed. However, he did not suspect that the so-called Zhao Ritian was Yi Chun. After all, although Yi Chun was also a martial emperor, he had just broken through. To him, Yi Chun was not a match for the giant demon sect's patriarch. After Yi Chun returned to the King Mu fort quietly, he prepared to refine the materials to repair the ancient teleportation formation. At that moment, someone knocked on the door outside. It was Mu Kaiwei. Chapter 786. Yi Chun put away the things in his hands and removed the barrier outside the room. He then frowned and said, "Come in." Creak. The door was pushed open gently. Mu Kaiwei, who was dressed in a plain dress, walked in slowly. After consuming the golden dragon pill that Yi Chun had given her, she had broken through to the venerable stage. Perhaps it was the increase in her strength that caused her to have an extra sense of elegance and transcendence. Coupled with her weak and feigned cold temperament, it gave others the feeling that she was a goddess that had been banished to the mortal world, causing them to have the impulse to carefully protect her. Mu Kaiwei was a little timid and nervous when she sensed Yi Chen's gaze. She tiptoed in like a kitten and said with a flushed face, "Young Master Shi, sorry to disturb you so late at night." "I hope you don't mind." Yi Chen smiled lightly. He said while smiling after sensing the change in her aura, "You've broken through?" "Yes." Mu Kaiwei nodded lightly and said softly, "I have to thank young Master Shi for this. If not for your golden dragon pill, I might have needed another year to break through to the venerable stage." She clenched her fists tightly after saying that. She suddenly mustered her courage and stared at Yi Chen's rather ordinary facial features with her beautiful eyes. She said hesitantly, "You're leaving tomorrow?" Yi Chen was stunned at first, then he nodded and said, "That's right. I've been out for a while. My family should be worried about me." Mu Kaiwei lowered her pretty face when she heard that. She seemed to be a little sad. However, she forced a smile and said, "Young master, you were chased by someone earlier. Although you're now at the Emperor's stage, you have to be careful along the way." At that moment, she had no idea that her expression was like a wife warning her husband who was traveling far away. Under the light, her gentle and moving smile made Yi Chen a little dazed. While he was in a daze, he felt a fragrance suddenly attack him. When he snapped back to his senses, he realized that the beauty was already standing before him. Before Yi Chen could react, the latter's pretty face blushed. She bit her red lips lightly with her pearly teeth and tiptoed. Her soft red lips carried a burning passion as she quickly kissed Yi Chen's lips like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. Although the touch was extremely short, it left an endless aftertaste in Yi Chen's mind. Just when the latter was about to escape, he instinctively extended his hand and grabbed her slender waist. At that moment, the latter's soft and boneless body stiffened slightly. Under the flickering red candlelight, their eyes met, and their heartbeats beat according to the frequency of the flickering candlelight. In the end, the latter took a deep breath and said in a barely audible voice, "What if I say that I like you?" Yi Chen's body froze when he heard that. He then retracted his hand and took 2 steps back. He said apologetically, "I'm sorry. I won't stay for you." Mu Caiwei's rosy face turned pale. She held back her tears and turned to leave. A faint voice sounded, "I'm willing to wait for you." After watching her leave, Yi Chen could not help but stare blankly at his hand that was holding her earlier. He said while forcing a smile, "You're about to leave. Why can't you control yourself?" "Great, I've given others hope." After a sleepless night, Yi Chen walked out of the room after tidying up his things the next morning. King Mu had already made all the members of the King Mu fort anxious. They waited outside quietly. After Yi Chen walked out, he took a good look at everyone. In the end, his gaze stopped on Mu Kaiwei for a few seconds. He saw that her eyes were heavy, as if she had not slept well the entire night. When the latter noticed his gaze, she hurriedly lowered her pretty face. Jier could not stop crying, her face filled with reluctance. King Mu stood out and said, "Senior Sure, everyone knows that you're leaving, so we spontaneously wanted to send you off one last time to repay your kindness to the King Mu fort." Plop! With a loud thud, everyone knelt on one knee and said to Yi Chen sadly, "Send off young master. Send off young master. Send off young master." Leaving was supposed to be a happy thing for Yi Chen. However, he felt a little sad after what they did. He took a deep breath in and said while smiling, "There's no need for this, everyone. We'll meet again if we're fated. When I'm not around in the future, remember not to use my name to do anything. Otherwise, you'll definitely be killed." After saying that, he seemed to have thought of something. Then he suddenly grabbed at the purple bamboo forest outside the King Mu fort. Under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, the purple bamboo forest that was close to 50 square meters shrunk rapidly and turned into a dazzling long sword. Yi Chen lifted his head to look at Mu Kaiwei. "Lend me a drop of blood." Mu Kaiwei was stunned at first. She then bit her finger and a drop of dark red blood shot at Yi Chen. Yi Chen reached out to catch it. With a flick of his finger, it fused into the long sword. With a thought, over 10 precious refining materials shot out from his storage ring. Condense. With a wave of his sleeve, he fused the long sword and the dozen or so refining materials into one. Finally, he tossed the long sword to King Mu and said in a deep voice, "This sword contains a trace of my divine might. It's like a full-powered attack from a martial emperor. It can be used 3 times, and it can only be activated by the bloodline of the people from the King Mu fort. Don't use it unless it's absolutely necessary. Remember this." Like a full-powered attack from a martial emperor? King Mu was stunned at first when he heard that. Then he accepted it excitedly. "Thank you, Senior Sure. I'll definitely follow your instructions." Disperse. Jiao, send me off. Yichen waved and walked into the distance. Jiao, who was crying hard, wiped her tears and followed him hurriedly. She said as she walked, "Young master, can you not leave? I can't bear to part with you." Yichen turned around and looked at her after walking a kilometer away, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. As the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. Why are you crying? Jiao opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something. Don't speak and don't move, Yichen said and subsequently tapped between her brows with his finger. Focus and feel what's in your mind. Jiao immediately did as she was told. It had to be said that transmitting memories was no different from torture to ordinary people. However, this girl still did not make a sound. After he was done, Yichen looked at her pale face and said, "Digest what I gave you well. Don't pass it to outsiders, not even your fort master. If you can cultivate to foundation building, we might meet again." After saying that, a few bottles of medicinal pills appeared in his hand, and he handed them to her. "These medicinal pills are for you too. You'll have to rely on yourself in the future." Ever since he came to the ancient desolate realm, Jiao was the person closest to him. Yichen was the most worried about this 15 or 16-year-old girl. After discovering that she had a triple spiritual root, Yichen decided to teach her cultivation method in the end. Jiao nodded repeatedly. She also realized how important what Yichen was teaching her was. She said after some hesitation, "Young master, can I tell young mistress?" "Sure, I'm leaving." Yichen disappeared from where he was after saying that. Jiao started crying again. "Young master, I didn't even have the time to tell you. Jiao also likes you." All the people from the King Mu fort had already retreated. Only two figures stood on the spot, staring into the distance in a daze. King Mu took a deep breath in before turning his head to look at Mu Kaiwei beside him with a pained expression. "Why aren't you going to send him off?" "So what if I do? So what if I don't?" Mu Kaiwei's body trembled slightly when she heard that. Then, she bit her lips lightly with her pearly white teeth, and her delicate and pretty face was a little stubborn. "Perhaps we're not from the same world." Sigh. King Mu sighed softly. Right at this moment, an exquisite figure ran over from afar. Young mistress. Mu Kaiwei forced a smile and said, "He left. Young master has left." Jiao nodded while panting. Then, she said in an extremely serious tone, "But before he left, he told me to wait for him for 3 years. 3 years later, he'll definitely come back and marry you." King Mu immediately cried out in surprise, "What?" Mu Kaiwei was stunned at first. Then, a blush instantly appeared on her jade-like face. She glared at her fiercely. "Bad girl, how dare you lie to me?" "He really didn't lie to you." Jiao face fell, and she immediately said in an extremely wronged manner, "Young master really said that. He said that he was embarrassed to say it in front of you. Otherwise, why would he ask me to send him off alone?" Mu Kaiwei's pretty face was flushed red. She had completely lost her usual coldness and cleverness. She looked at her nervously. "Really? That's right. Young master also asked you to wash up and wait for him." Jiao nodded repeatedly. Subsequently, she took out the few bottles of medicinal pills that Yichen had given her. "Young master said that he doesn't have anything valuable, so he asked me to give this to you as a betrothal gift." King Mu took it and opened it to take a look. His expression changed drastically. "Grade 4 medicinal pills. These are grade 4 medicinal pills." "Senior, sure, no. My son-in-law is so generous. P.S. I've been writing the 5th chapter for 11 hours, and I haven't eaten yet. I hope that everyone will give me a monthly vote or recommendation vote on account of my hard work today. Thank you." The main character is about to return to Earth, and the follow-up will be even more exciting. Chapter 787. Ancient Desolate Realm, Tianfeng Sea Area. Ever since he left the King Mu fort, he had changed his direction, restrained his aura, and rushed towards the ultimate ruin. The reason why he did not rush to the ultimate ruin directly was to prevent anyone from noticing. Tianfeng Canyon. This was a place located at the border between Tianfeng City and the ultimate ruin. This place was an ancient battlefield in the early years. It was the battlefield between the human race, the northern barbarians, and the sea beasts. After thousands of years, countless souls had been buried here. When Yi Chun passed by Tianfeng Canyon, he seemed to have sensed something. He stopped and looked straight at the ground. Below him, there were two towering mountains that were tightly connected. There was only a gap between them that allowed carriages to pass through. It was like a sliver of sky, and the ground was filled with ruins and bones. Two young figures moved quickly within the sliver of sky. The two of them held magic tools in their hands, and their bodies were filled with ghostly energy. They seemed to be chasing something. It was a man and a woman. The woman was wearing a black dress, and her face was extremely enchanting, while the man's face was filled with malice. In front of them was a palm-sized jade-green monkey climbing back and forth on the cliff. From time to time, it would turn around and bare its teeth at the two people behind it. The woman in the black dress urged, "Senior brother, hurry up. That beast won't be able to hold on for long. You must catch it. When the time comes, it'll be perfect for Master's 100th birthday gift." "Junior sister, do you think this beast is the ghost monkey that Master mentioned? An existence that specializes in devouring ghosts?" The malicious-looking man said, and his speed increased again. "I'm not sure about the specifics, but we're both grade 2 mystic masters, yet we can't catch a little beast. From this, we can see that this little beast is definitely extraordinary." At this point, the woman in the black dress's expression changed. She saw the monkey in front of her actually rushing toward a natural cave that was as thick as a bowl. "Senior brother, this is bad. It's going into the cave. Evil creature, where do you think you're going?" At the critical moment, the malicious-looking man suddenly patted his waist. With a flash of black light, a palm-sized black net-like object flashed and immediately attacked the jade-green monkey in the distance. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The green monkey's fur stood on end. It roared and sped up toward the cave, 1 meter away. However, at that moment, the palm-sized net suddenly expanded and enveloped it. "Return." The malicious-looking man made a seal with his fingertips, and the big black net shrank violently before falling back into his hand again. There was a palm-sized monkey struggling in the net, as if it wanted to bite through the net and escape. He immediately laughed disdainfully. "This is the shady ghost tint that Master bestowed upon me. How can you, an evil creature, destroy it?" The woman in the black dress came over and complained, "Senior martial brother, why didn't you use the magic tool that Master gave you earlier? You made us search for you for so long." "Junior sister, I didn't expect this beast to be so cunning. Fortunately, we managed to capture him." The malicious-looking man didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His greedy eyes roamed around the woman's body. He licked his lips and said, "Junior sister, you caught me. How are you going to repay me?" "Senior martial brother, you're so bad." The woman in the black dress immediately smiled charmingly when she heard that. As she was stroking her hair coquettishly, she suddenly turned around and looked behind her. The malicious-looking man also looked over. A young man in black slowly walked over from 10 meters away. His expression was cold, and he walked very slowly. His gaze was fixed on the monkey in the man's hand. The moment it saw the young man in black, the monkey that had already lost all hope seemed to have seen its savior. It squeaked nonstop. The malicious-looking man's expression changed slightly when he saw that. He immediately said subconsciously, "Brother, I'm Wang Yuan, a disciple of the shady, sifting sect. May I know your name?" Yi Chun stretched out his hand slowly. "Give it to me." The malicious-looking man's face turned grim, and there was a hint of fierceness in his eyes. "Brother, this beast was captured by us. You, however," Yi Chun did not stop. "Senior martial brother, why are you wasting your breath on him? Just kill him. How dare he steal something from the shady, sifting sect? Why don't you go out and ask around?" The woman in the black dress's eyes turned cold. She took the initiative to take out a magic tool and attacked Yi Chun first. The magic tool seemed to be a ruler, but it was surging with vile energy. Yi Chun waved his hand expressionlessly. A wind blade slashed over immediately. The woman in the black dress was split into two along with her magic tool. She fell to the ground and died instantly. The malicious-looking man's expression changed when he saw that. He immediately said, "Senior, it's a misunderstanding. This junior will return this beast to you now." He knew his junior sister's strength very well. She was at peak innate stage and had a protective magic tool that his master had given her. Even a venerable stage cultivator could not kill her instantly. However, the person before him had done it. This person must be a powerhouse at the venerable stage. As he thought to this point, he immediately handed the monkey and the shady, sifting magic tool to Yi-chun respectfully. The moment Yi-chun reached out to grab it, a ferocious gleam flashed through the malicious-looking man's eyes. He suddenly pointed at the shady, sifting, and shouted, "Explode!" This magic tool was given to him by his master. If it self-destructed at a critical moment, it would be enough to severely injure a venerable stage cultivator. To him, Yi-chun's ability was at most a venerable stage cultivator. Under his surprise attack, Yi-chun would be severely injured even if he did not die. However, to his horror, after he gave the command to self-destruct to the magic tool did not move at all. It was as if it suddenly did not listen to his orders. When he lifted his head to look at Yi-chun again, he was met with a cold gaze. He wanted to retreat by instinct. "Senior, this is die." Before the malicious-looking man could finish, he was slapped into a bloody mist. He did not even have the time to scream. "You bastard, you actually ran all the way here." Yi-chun did not even look at the mess on the ground. His gaze landed on the monkey slowly. "If I didn't happen to bump into you, you would have been captured by them." Ever since he woke up, he had not seen the monkey. He thought that the beast had run away, but he did not expect to meet it here. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The monkey could not stop screaming as if it was explaining its experience to Yi-chun. It looked extremely wronged. In the spatial rift in the ultimate ruin, Yi-chun spent half an hour repairing the ancient teleportation formation. Only then did he take out a mystic stone that was about the size of a bowl and placed it at the core of the ancient teleportation formation. Throughout the entire process, his eyes were glued to the formation in front of him. He was slightly nervous, afraid that the formation would not be activated. Swoosh, with a flash of white light, the ancient teleportation formation in front of him immediately emitted dazzling light. There was a faint suction force coming from it. Yi-chun extended his hand and beckoned. The monkey landed on his shoulder and looked around uneasily. "Let's go home." Chapter 788. On the 7th day since the news of Yi-chun's death spread in Tiannan, China. However, the Yi family of Lin City was in a festive mood at the moment. It was full of guests, and the rain was pattering down from the sky, hitting the wounded hearts of the living. Countless men in suits and sunglasses ignored the drizzle and stood on both sides of the street outside the Yi family villa. A long carpet was laid in the middle of the road. Countless people in luxurious clothes stepped on the long carpet and walked into the Yi family villa in an orderly manner. No one spoke during this period. The atmosphere was very gloomy and sad. Many people in the entire Tiannan and even China were still grieving over the death of the China No. 1, Mad Southern Yi. However, today was the 7th day of Mad Southern Ye's death. The Yi family finally recovered from their grief and planned to hold a ritual for him and erect a cenotaph. A mourning hall was set up in the living room of the Yi family villa. A black and white photo of Yi-chun stood at the most eye-catching position. It was very painful. Below him was a cold woman dressed in plain clothes and a 5-year-old girl dressed in white clothes. The woman was stupefied as she threw the money into the brazier, while the little girl was hugging a memorial tablet in a daze. There were countless wreaths and elegiac couplets around the mourning hall. Lin Tai and Yang Tian, who were dressed in white, guarded the door like door gods. They did not move at all, as if they had been petrified. The Chow family of Tiannan sends a pair of elegiac couplets. It says, "A pure heart shines on the sun and moon, and a pure name lives forever." The Li family of Tiannan sends a pair of wreaths. Yang Tian and Lin Tai would only bow to the guests blankly when they passed by the door. The Han family, Li family, Yin family, Qin family, and Pang family of Beijing each sent a pair of elegiac couplets and wreaths. The MC's decibel level suddenly increased. Yin Nan Fei, Li Yun Xiao, Pang Yuan Qing, and the rest, who were dressed in plain clothes, came together. All of them looked extremely solemn. The expressions of many guests changed when they saw that. They did not expect the masters of the 5 wealthy families of Beijing to come personally to pay their respects to Yichun. Thank you for your concern. Yang Tian bowed to the 5 of them solemnly and led them into the morning hall. Su Yuhan, who was dressed in white, stood up and bowed to the 5 of them while holding Meng Ming's hand. Widow Su greets the 5 of you. Han Qinhu, who was the leader, quickly stopped her. He took a deep breath and comforted her. The dead are gone, but the living are still here. Please restrain your grief and take care of yourself. He looked at the adorable little baby who had just turned 5 years old and was holding the memorial tablet with both hands. His eyes were full of pity. After saying that, he turned around and led the 4 to the front of the morning hall. Immediately, someone came forward to offer incense to the 5 of them. A bow. Han Qinhu took the incense and looked at the black and white photo before him. And then he said in a deep voice, Supreme Yi, have a safe journey. I hereby promise that as long as my Li family doesn't fall, the Yi family won't fall. The Li family and the Yi family will live and die together. At the end of his sentence, he held the incense sticks with both hands and prayed to Yi Qin's black and white portrait. Supreme Yi, rest in peace. The other 4 bowed deeply. At the same time, it was late winter in Kunlun Mountain. Many mountain peaks were covered in snow. The cold wind rustled, freezing one's bones, and it was difficult to find birds. On a steep and lonely peak, there was an old figure standing at the top of the mountain, looking down at the entire world. He was only wearing a gray autumn shirt that was extremely thin. However, in this cold season, he did not move at all, allowing the snowflakes to fall on his body. A young man in a suit with thick eyebrows and big eyes handed over a mink coat and gently draped it over him. Old Chun, it's getting colder and colder. You should put on some clothes. Don't freeze your body. The old man did not answer his question. Xiao Tian, did you hear that? Qin Xiao Tian was slightly stunned. What? The death knell. The death knell has finally been rung. The thin old man looked down the mountain, his gaze shooting towards the direction of Tiannan. There was a hint of regret and reluctance in his eyes. Listen, there's such a strong aura of death in this bell. There's even killing intent, blood, aura. Old Chun, is something going to happen? Qin Xiaoyan's heart sank. He sensed that there was a hidden meaning in Old Chen's words. He felt uneasy, but he was more confused. When the news of Yi Chen's death came, the leading figure of the country before him had resigned and handed over his military power. He came to Kunlun Mountain alone and stayed for 7 days. He did not interact with outsiders, as if he was waiting for something. However, no matter how he asked during these 7 days, the old man before him seemed to not hear him. He seemed to be looking down at the snowy scenery of Kunlun and the human world. After an unknown period of time, the snow stopped. 2 or 3 birds flew out of the forest, cautiously searching for food in the snowy land. One of them hit on a cedar and secretly sized up the old man and the young man, seemingly curious. The snow has finally stopped, Olchen said calmly. He suddenly turned around and stared at Qin Xiaotian. Go down the mountain and bring Ye's family to the northeast to hide. He left something there when he was alive. Why? The uneasiness in Qin Xiaoyan's heart grew stronger. What about you? The snow has stopped. Old Chen looked into the distance and smiled. The person I'm waiting for should be here soon. Remember, come and collect my corpse in 3 days and bury me on Kunlun Mountain. What? Qin Xiaoyan's heart skipped a beat. Before he could ask anything, he immediately felt an extremely terrifying force attacking him, causing his body to fly down the mountain uncontrollably. He could not believe everything that was happening before him. Qin Xiaotian had never expected that the old man he had protected for more than 10 years would have such a terrifying cultivation base. He He was even more terrifying than any powerhouse he had ever seen. Our Emperor's stage. Old Chun, he roared angrily. His heart was filled with shock and anger. He vaguely guessed what was going on, but he was powerless to do anything. He could only watch as the old man moved further and further away from him until he finally disappeared from his sight. Not long after he disappeared, dozens of terrifying auras suddenly exploded in Kunlun Mountain, rushing over like an avalanche. The dozens of figures paused when they saw the old man in front of them. Their faces were filled with fear, and for a moment, no one dared to take half a step forward. Old Chen acted as if he did not see that. He gently took off his mink coat and folded it carefully on the ground. Is it Old Bai or Old Xiao? Come out. In the next moment, a crack in the ice slowly appeared in the sky, and a white figure slowly stepped out of the crack. The person was wrapped in a hazy brilliance, and his face could not be seen clearly. He was like an earth immortal that had descended to the world, causing people to tremble. Old Chun did not even raise his head, so it's Old Bai. Looks like Old Xiao still looks down on me. He actually didn't come personally. Chun Tilong. The figure in the sky harumphed coldly. I don't want to bicker with you today, nor do I want to fight you. If you know what's good for you, don't interfere. Perhaps you still have a few years to live. You don't have to threaten me with Emperor Stage cultivators being banned from entering the world. My mission is to hold you back. Old Chin ignored the cold and reached out to dig the snow in front of him. As the saying goes, one should not cause trouble to one's wife and children. You're from the ancient families of Shang Santian, after all. You've always followed the ancient law. Don't tell me you don't even know this principle. Of course, that's true. However, this Junior Yi has killed too many people from the 5 ancient families, especially my grandson, Xiao Yu, and the young master of the Xiao family, Yuan Jing. Why should we talk about the ancient law with such actions? Since that's the case, let's fight. Old Chin sighed softly and dug out a long sword wrapped in black cloth from the snow. That winter, I traveled to Kunlun with a great ancestor. I once buried the sword here in front of him. I didn't expect it to appear in the world again today. P.S. There are only 2 chapters today. The climax is coming soon. My brain is a little stuck. I still owe a chapter. I'll update tomorrow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 789. Yang Tian turned his head to look by instinct and saw Yi Chen's second uncle, second aunt, Yi Ming, and Yang Hui had fallen behind. Damn, Yi Wen, who was in the crowd, cried and screamed. She wanted to turn around to save them by instinct, but there were already a few people charging at them. Xiaoyu grabbed her tightly. Don't go back. Even Yi Hai's expression changed. Second brother. Wen, brother, leave now. Don't care about us. Yi Ming forced a smile and took a deep breath in. He walked toward a martial Dao master with determination and hugged his thigh tightly. Promise me that you'll live. You must live. You're courting death. The martial Dao master was slightly stunned. Subsequently, he scoffed and slapped the top of Yi Ming's head with his palm. Blood splattered everywhere. However, Yi Ming's hand was still grabbing his leg tightly. Hubby, I'll fight you to the death. Upon seeing that, Yi Chen's second aunt, Yang Hui, shrieked in an extremely devastating manner. Madness filled her eyes as she staggered toward the martial Dao master. Die! The man slapped her, and Yang Hui's head spun rapidly as if it had fallen off. Eventually, her face fell to the back, and her body fell hard to the ground. Yi Chen's second uncle and second aunt were dead. Dad! Yi Wen and Yi Hai almost fainted when they saw that. Let's go. Xiaoyu held back her grief. She ignored Yi Wen and Yi Hai's objections and grabbed them to catch up to Yang Tian, who was in front. Subsequently, the Star Pavilion members stayed behind to buy time for them. Follow me. Don't fall behind. Yang Tian's eyes were filled with tears of blood, and the corner of his lips was covered in blood. He could not stop killing the martial Dao masters who were blocking his way. Kill, kill, kill. His mind was filled with killing intent. Just as a martial Dao master was about to slap him with his palm, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him and took the attack head-on. It was Lin Tai. Yang Tian was stunned at first, but his eyes were soon replaced by endless rage. Traitor, get lost. He hated it. if not for the traitor, Lin Tai, who tampered with the formation. How could this happen? Old Yang, leave. I'll help you stall them. Lin Tai spat a mouthful of blood and turned his head to give him a pale smile. Subsequently, he took out a few demonic life reduction pills and swallowed them. A martial Dao master of Shang Santian clearly did not expect Lin Tai, who had clearly betrayed them, to stop them at such a critical moment. Lin, are you crazy? Ha ha, yes, I'm crazy. Lin Tai laughed maniacally. As the aura on his body skyrocketed, he charged at the martial Dao masters fearlessly. Let's die together. Let's die together. You guys have destroyed me and everything that belongs to my lord. Yang Tian suddenly cried, Lin Tai caused all of this today. I've let my lord down, I've let all of you down, and I've let myself down. I, Lin Tai, have been out in the world since I was a teenager. I've always believed that brothers are like hands and feet, and women are like clothes. I've only achieved something when I'm middle-aged. I was fortunate enough to follow my lord and get to know you, Yang Tian. I'm really happy. I hate it. I hate why I fell for women. Old Yang, let's go. Let's go. I have to make up for the mistakes I've made. I have to repent to my lord. I hope we can still be brothers in our next life. Let's go. Yang Tian wiped his tears and charged out with his men. Su Yuhan could not help but turn around to take a look. She saw that one of Lin Tai's arms had been torn off, and his chest had been pierced by a punch. However, as soon as they rushed out of the Yi family's villa, an extremely terrifying pressure suddenly descended from the sky. Everyone felt as if a mountain had descended, and they knelt on the ground, unable to move. Only Qianqian was not affected by the pressure. However, she looked at the sky in fear at that moment. Her little face was timid. A bunch of trash. I almost let you guys escape. As an extremely old voice came, the air swayed gently, and a white figure slowly walked out of the tower. The other party's facial features were completely wrapped in a resplendent light, making him look like a god looking down on all living beings. Who are you? Yang Tian prostrated on the ground, his heart filled with despair. Facing such an existence, even he was helpless. I'm Bai Zizai, the Bai family's patriarch of Shang Santian. The voice of the figure in the sky was extremely calm, but his words made Yang Tian and the rest feel despair. Their scalps went numb. The patriarch of Shang Santian, the Bai family's martial emperor, looked down at the people on the ground. When his gaze swept past Qianqian, he suddenly paused. It's you. I've been looking for you in Shang Santian for 20 years. I didn't expect to meet you here. I've really worn out my iron shoes in fruitless search, and now I've found you without even looking for you. The Bai family's martial emperor's eyes shone brightly, as if he was excited. Little girl, come with me. I won't kill you. Uncle, can you not kill big sister and the rest if I go with you? Qianqian looked at him timidly. The Bai family's martial emperor snorted coldly. You want to negotiate with me? Boom! A huge hand descended from the sky and grabbed at Qianqian. Qianqian lost her balance and fell to the ground. She could only watch helplessly as the huge hand got closer and closer. Just as the huge hand was about to touch her body, the space around Qianqian suddenly trembled violently. An incomparably old hand suddenly reached out from the space and destroyed the Bai family's martial emperor's hand. The Bai family's martial emperor was shocked and said angrily, "Who is it?" The next moment, an old figure staggered over from afar. The other party was clearly 400 to 500 meters away, but he crossed over 100 meters with a single step. It was an old man wearing a mental hospital's uniform. His hair was disheveled, and he had a rosacea nose. His forehead was sunken, and he staggered as if he was drunk. He was crying and laughing at the same time. Seeing who it was, Qianqian's eyes lit up. Grandpa's son. The Bai family's martial emperor stared at him as if he was facing a great enemy. A few seconds later, his expression changed. So, it's you. You've been hiding for 20 years. I didn't expect you to appear in the end. The old man didn't seem to hear him. He crazily circled around the crowd, kneeling on the ground a few times and laughed like a child. Yang Tian, who had already given up all hope, couldn't help but stare at him with his eyes wide open. He thought to himself, is this the grandpa's son that Qian has been talking about? Why does he look like a lunatic who ran out of a mental hospital? Qian ran over and grabbed his trousers tightly. Her eyes were filled with tears as seeing a loved one. Grandpa's son, I'm Qian. The word Qian caused the old man's eyes to regain a trace of clarity. He carried Qian on his shoulder and returned to his crazy appearance. Bastard! Seeing that the other party had actually ignored him, the Bai family's martial emperor snorted coldly. A huge palm immediately suppressed the old man and the young man below. Chapter 790. What are you doing? Xiao Kun smiled arrogantly. His cold gaze swept past Su Yuhan and the rest. Yi killed so many people from Shang Santian. Although he's dead now, it doesn't mean that this blood feud can be erased. Boom! As soon as he said that, everyone felt a bolt out of the blue flash through their minds. Yi Hai, Yi Ming, and the rest almost fainted. Nobody expected Shang Santian to not let them go after Yi Chen's death. Su Yuhan's delicate body trembled. She reached out and hugged Meng Meng. She bit her lip and looked at Xiao Kun fixedly. If I'm not wrong, you guys have been planning for today for a long time. You even secretly destroyed my Yi family's formation. As expected of mad, southern Yes woman, Xiao Kun looked at her with slight admiration and said proudly, it's been exactly 7 days since the news of mad southern Yes death spread. We waited for 7 days before confirming that Yi is really dead. That's why we attacked. He said meaningfully, I think you must be very curious about who tampered with the formation of your Yi family villa. After saying that, he clapped his hands lightly and the people behind him immediately opened up a path. A burly and familiar figure walked in with difficulty. Seeing the newcomer, Yi Hai, Yi Ming, and the rest shuddered violently. They said in disbelief, Xiaolin, why are you doing this? Su Yuhan forced a smile, as if she had already guessed it. Yang Tian's eyes were bloodshot. He could not believe his eyes. Lin Tai, it's you. That was his good brother. He was the first to follow Yi Chun. Now he had betrayed him. Moreover, he had secretly tampered with the formation of the Yi residence villa. Plop. Lin Tai bent his knees and knelt hard on the ground. He said in an extremely hoarse voice, Madam, Uncle, Old Yang, I did all of this. Dong, dong, dong. He kowtowed heavily and burst into tears on the spot. They caught my woman and used her to threaten me. I really had no choice. I really had no choice. Traitor! You traitor! Yang Tian angrily rushed over and gave him a kick. This kick sent him flying a few meters away. For a woman, you betrayed us. You betrayed Old Yi. Why are you still human? Xiao Kun and the others watched this scene with a playful expression. Lin Tai curled into a ball and screamed at the top of his lungs. But Xiaoqiu's pregnant. He kept slapping himself as he cried, Madam, Uncle, Old Yang, I'm sorry, I'm not a human. I'm not a human. Yang Tian kicked him again, his body trembling. From today onwards, you are no longer my brother. Lin Tai said in extreme pain, Old Yang, Madam, Uncle, they've promised me that they won't kill you guys as long as you guys don't resist. Xiao Kun smirked coldly. We never said that. Lin Tai's body jolted as soon as he heard that. He lifted his eyes to look at him in disbelief. Why you guys promised me that as long as I break the formation, you guys won't kill Madam and the rest. You'll even let Xiaoqiu go. So what if we agreed? Xiao Kun smiled in disdain. We didn't say that we would fulfill our promise to a piece of trash like you. Moreover, our goal is to use you to break the Yi family's formation. Bleck. Lin Tai spat blood out of his mouth when he heard that. Everyone, listen to my orders. Leave no one alive in the Yi family. Xiao Kun waved his hand abruptly, and the people behind him took a step forward. At that moment, an extremely terrified voice was heard. Wait, I surrender. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw an old woman slowly walking out from behind Su Yuhan. The old woman was holding a walking stick, and her face was filled with fear. Tang Ning's pretty face changed in the crowd. Yao Bingwei, Xiao Kun looked over with an extremely cold gaze. Who are you? Give me a reason not to kill you. Yao Bingwe shuddered when she met his gaze. She immediately said, Sir, I'm not from the Yi family. I'm Yao Bingwe from the spiritual medicine mountain. Be as long as you don't kill me. My spiritual medicine mountain is willing to serve you as our master. Spiritual medicine mountain? Shao Kuan was stunned at first. Then he said with interest, Is it the spiritual medicine mountain that's rumored to produce medicinal herbs? Yes, yes, yes. Yao Bingwe could not stop nodding like a chick pecking on grains. Master, our spiritual medicine mountain was also threatened by Yi. He killed his way into our spiritual medicine mountain that day. My father and I had no choice but to submit to him. As she spoke, she pointed at her old white hair and wrinkled skin and shouted at the top of her lungs, I am only in my 20s, but I ended up like this. It's all his fault. Interesting. Shao Kuan was stunned for a moment before he laughed out loud. Since you're so sensible, come over here. I promise I won't kill you. Yao Bingwe hesitated for a moment. In the end, she walked towards Shao Kuan while trembling. She only felt relieved when she realized that he was fine behind Shao Kuan. Yang Tian cursed. Yao Bingwe, you and her daughter will die a horrible death. With Shao Kuan's support, Yao Bingwe smirked coldly. I don't know if I'll die a horrible death, but you guys will definitely die before me. Xiaoyu said coldly, Kill us if you want. Don't think that we'll surrender. Is there anyone else who wants to surrender? Shao Kuan sized up the crowd one by one. His gaze stopped on Tang Ning and the other women, and a hint of lust flashed across his eyes. He could tell that these women were of the highest quality, especially the woman named Xiaoya. It would not be an exaggeration to describe her as a stunner. Me too. As a weak voice was heard, a woman in plain clothes slowly walked out of the crowd. It was Murong Shui from Ganzhou's Murong family. Sister Shui, wife, Yu Shasha's beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. She had never expected that her best friend, who she could tell everything to, would choose to surrender. Murong Shui acted as if she did not hear her question. She walked to Shao Kuan and said extremely respectfully, Sir, I'm from Ganzhou's Murong family. Shao Kuan said with a faint smile, Give me a reason not to kill you. Murong Shui's heart trembled. After taking a deep breath in, she turned around and looked at Yu Shasha indifferently. This B*TCH is clearly an outsider, but because of Mad Southern Ye's help, she became the head of the Murong family. Sir, as long as you don't kill me, I'll have the ability to take charge of the Murong family when I return to the Murong family. Murong Shui desperately threw out her life-saving straw. When the time comes, the entire Murong family and even Ganzhou will worship you as their master, be it money or women, or even my body. In the crowd, Yu Shasha's body trembled slightly. She looked at her sadly. Sister Shui, why are you doing this? Chapter 791. Yu Shasha could not believe that the person in front of her would make such a choice and say such words. She had always treated Murong Shui as her sister. Even though Yi Chan appointed her to take charge of the Murong family, she would consult Murong Shui no matter whether it was a big or small matter. She even gave her power. What? Murong Shui chuckled and looked at Yu Shasha with jealousy. Who do you think you are? You're just an ugly duckling, a stupid girl. Compared to you, I'm smart and understand people. In terms of figure, appearance, and ability, I'm much better than you. However, you chose you to take charge of the Murong family. I'm not convinced. I want to ask why. Do you think I'll be grateful to you just because you gave me power? At that moment, she said everything that she had been holding in for a long time. On the contrary, I'll hate you. That's why you don't know that I've actually made you the so-called Murong family head of figurehead. The moment that was said, Yu Shasha's pretty face turned extremely pale. Tears flowed out uncontrollably. Yang Tian cursed. B*TCH, you B*TCH. That's right. I may B*TCH. Unfortunately, all of you are going to die in front of a B*TCH like me. Murong Shui smirked coldly and stood behind Shao Kuan respectfully. She looked at Su Yuhan and the rest with extreme pride and resentment. All right, I've already given you a chance. Since some of you don't know how to cherish it, then Shao Kuan smiled arrogantly. He raised his arm and waved it down. He spat out a word softly. Capture the women alive and kill all the men. The moment the word kill was said, it exploded in everyone's ears like a demonic voice of death. Subsequently, a terrifying aura erupted in the Yi family villa. Several figures took the lead and charged at Su Yuhan and the rest. Niu Qingshan shouted angrily. Then, he took a step forward and took the initiative to face the martial Dao masters who were charging at him. If you want to kill the people of the Yi family, you'll have to ask me first. Die. At that moment, he unleashed his martial highness realm cultivation and slammed his palm forward. The terrifying force immediately turned the few martial Dao masters into a bloody mist. Xiao Kuan's expression changed slightly. He glared at Niu Qingshan, and the killing intent in his eyes did not decrease. Niu Qingshan, are you sure your dragon soul wants to become enemies with Shang Santian? Hee. So Shang Santian still has my dragon soul in your eyes? In that case, why did you bring people to destroy the Yi clan? Don't you know that my duty is to stop you? Niu Qingshan's sorrowful laughter resounded throughout the world. You're courting death. Xiao Kuan's gaze turned cold. His figure flashed and instantly appeared in front of Niu Qingshan. An extremely overbearing palm print landed heavily on his body. Pooh! Niu Qingshan immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His body uncontrollably retreated a few steps, and his chest caved in on the spot. Elder Niu. Seeing that, Su Yuhan and Yi Hai's expressions changed. Clearly, they did not expect Niu Qingshan to be no match for him. Xiao Kuan smirked coldly. Niu Qingshan, you're just an intermediate-level martial venerable, and you're trying to stop us? Don't forget, we have a total of 5 martial honors here. As his voice fell, the other 4 martial honorables took a step forward and their auras exploded on the spot. For powerful auras swept across the entire area. Protect Yuhan! Yang Tian roared and led the remaining Star Pavilion members to stand in front of Su Yuhan, Yi Hai, and the rest. Old Niu, leave one of the martial venerables to me. His eyes were filled with determination. Xiaoya took a step forward. Leave the other one to me. She had already reached the peak of spirit assembly. Even though she knew that she was not a match for a martial venerable, she still stood out at this moment. No need. Niu Qingshan suddenly laughed out loud. He took out 3 medicinal pills and swallowed them. Leave the 4 of them to me. Protect them and leave. As the medicinal pill entered his mouth, his aura increased by more than a few times, and his face aged at a speed visible to the naked eye. Insane life reduction pill. Xiao Kuan's expression turned grim when he saw that. Niu, looks like you really don't want to live anymore. You actually swallowed 3 insane life reduction pills in one go. The demon sealing life reduction pill consumed a person's life force and vital energy to increase their strength. Usually, 1 pill was enough to consume half of a person's life force. However, Niu Qingshan had swallowed 3 at once. Clearly, he did not have any hope of surviving. You guys forced me to do this. Niu Qingshan's eyes were bloodshot. His long hair danced wildly like a crazy demon. After a roar, he took the lead to attack. Yang Tian and Li Ying roared, Old Niu, take them away. Don't make unnecessary sacrifices. Niu Qingshan berated. Everyone, attack. Xiao Kuan shouted and led the other 4 martial venerables to face Niu Qingshan. He swallowed a forbidden pill. He won't be able to hold on for long. Once his life force is exhausted, it'll be his death. Boom! In an instant, the 6 figures suddenly clashed. 6 terrifying auras surged endlessly in this part of the world, bringing with them a tragic atmosphere. Let's go, let's go! Yang Tian could not help but cry when he saw Niu Qingshan being surrounded by the 6 of them. He took Meng Meng from Su Yuhan and hugged her. The little girl looked at him quietly, without saying a word. There was no color in her eyes, as if she was scared silly. Yang Tian's heart ached as he met his gaze. He forced a smile and said, Don't be afraid. I'll protect you guys, even if I have to die today. Miss Su, let's go. Don't let our boss die in vain. Dragon Soul's vice captain, Li Ying, held back her tears. She grabbed Su Yuhan's hand and rushed towards the exit of the Yi family villa. Master's wife, let's go. A black whip suddenly appeared in Xiaoya's hand. The whip emitted an extremely dense, vile aura as she stared at Yi Hai and Wu Lan with her beautiful eyes. Xiao Kuan, who was fighting Niu Qingshan in the air, had a change of expression. He immediately shouted, "Stop them!" As soon as he said that, more than 10 martial Dao masters rushed over, their killing intent locked onto everyone. "Those who block me will die." Yang Tan carried Meng Meng with one hand and used his other hand to lead the way. He threw a violent punch at a martial Dao master at the front. Bang! That person spat a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. The expressions of the others changed. Clearly, they did not expect Yang Tian's combat strength to be so high. However, in the next moment, several attacks came. One of them even slapped Meng Meng, who was in Yang Tian's arms. Yang Tian's expression changed. He immediately turned around and used his back to receive that person's palm. His body staggered violently, but he still forcefully controlled his body to prevent himself from falling. At that moment, a heart-wrenching voice came from behind him, "Dad, Mom." Chapter 792. Yang Tian turned his head to look by instinct and saw Yi Chen's second uncle, second aunt, Yi Ming, and Yang Hui had fallen behind. "Dad, Mom." Yi Wan, who was in the crowd, cried and screamed. She wanted to turn around to save them by instinct, but there were already a few people charging at them. Xiaoya grabbed her tightly. "Don't go back." Even Yi Hai's expression changed. "Second brother." Wen, "Brother, leave now. Don't care about us." Yi Ming forced a smile and took a deep breath in. He walked toward a martial Dao master with determination and hugged his thigh tightly. "Promise me that you'll live." "You must live. You're courting death." The martial Dao master was slightly stunned. Subsequently, he scoffed and slapped the top of Yi Ming's head with his palm. Blood splattered everywhere. However, Yi Ming's hand was still grabbing his leg tightly. "Hubby, I'll fight you to the death." Upon seeing that, Yi Chen's second aunt, Yang Hui, shrieked in an extremely devastating manner. Madness filled her eyes as she staggered toward the martial Dao master. "Die!" The man slapped her, and Yang Hui's head spun rapidly as if it had fallen off. Eventually, her face fell to the back, and her body fell hard to the ground. Yi Chen's second uncle and second aunt were dead. "Dad!" Yi Wan and Yi Hai almost fainted when they saw that. "Let's go." Xiaoya held back her grief. She ignored Yi Wan and Yi Hai's objections and grabbed them to catch up to Yang Tian, who was in front. Subsequently, the Star Pavilion members stayed behind to buy time for them. "Follow me. Don't fall behind." Yang Tian's eyes were filled with tears of blood, and the corner of his lips was covered in blood. He could not stop killing the martial Dao masters who were blocking his way. Kill, kill, kill. His mind was filled with killing intent. Just as a martial Dao master was about to slap him with his palm, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him and took the attack head-on. It was Lin Tai. Yang Tian was stunned at first, but his eyes were soon replaced by endless rage. "Traitor, get lost." He hated it. If not for the traitor, Lin Tai, who tampered with the formation. How could this happen? "Old Yang, leave. I'll help you stall them." Lin Tai spat a mouthful of blood and turned his head to give him a pale smile. Subsequently, he took out a few demonic life reduction pills and swallowed them. A martial Dao master of Shang Santian clearly did not expect Lin Tai, who had clearly betrayed them, to stop them at such a critical moment. "Lin, are you crazy?" "Ha, yes, I'm crazy." Lin Tai laughed maniacally. As the aura on his body skyrocketed, he charged at the martial Dao masters fearlessly. "Let's die together. Let's die together. You guys have destroyed me and everything that belongs to my lord." Yang Tian suddenly cried, I, Lin Tai, caused all of this today. I've let my lord down, I've let all of you down, and I've let myself down. I, Lin Tai, have been out in the world since I was a teenager. I've always believed that brothers are like hands and feet and women are like clothes. I've only achieved something when I'm middle-aged. I was fortunate enough to follow my lord and get to know you, Yang Tian. I'm really happy. I hate it. I hate why I fell for women. Old Yang, let's go. Let's go. I have to make up for the mistakes I've made. I have to repent to my lord. I hope we can still be brothers in our next life. Let's go." Yang Tian wiped his tears and charged out with his men. Su Yuhan could not help but turn around to take a look. She saw that one of Lin Tai's arms had been torn off, and his chest had been pierced by a punch. However, as soon as they rushed out of the Yi family's villa, an extremely terrifying pressure suddenly descended from the sky. Everyone felt as if a mountain had descended, and they knelt on the ground, unable to move. Only Qianqian was not affected by the pressure. However, she looked at the sky in fear at that moment. Her little face was timid. "A bunch of trash. I almost let you guys escape." As an extremely old voice came, the air swayed gently, and a white figure slowly walked out of the tower. The other party's facial features were completely wrapped in a resplendent light, making him look like a god looking down on all living beings. "Who are you?" Yang Tian prostrated on the ground, his heart filled with despair. Facing such an existence, even he was helpless. "I'm Bai Zizai, the Bai family's patriarch of Shang Santian." The voice of the figure in the sky was extremely calm, but his words made Yang Tian and the rest feel despair. Their scalps went numb. The patriarch of Shang Santian, the Bai family's martial emperor, looked down at the people on the ground. When his gaze swept past Qianqian, he suddenly paused. "It's you. I've been looking for you in Shang Santian for 20 years. I didn't expect to meet you here. I've really worn out my iron shoes in fruitless search, and now I've found you without even looking for you." The Bai family's martial emperor's eyes shone brightly, as if he was excited. "Little girl, come with me. I won't kill you." "Uncle, can you not kill big sister and the rest if I go with you?" Qianqian looked at him timidly. The Bai family's martial emperor snorted coldly. "You want to negotiate with me?" Boom! A huge hand descended from the sky and grabbed at Qianqian. Qianqian lost her balance and fell to the ground. She could only watch helplessly as the huge hand got closer and closer. Just as the huge hand was about to touch her body, the space around Qianqian suddenly trembled violently. An incomparably old hand suddenly reached out from the space and destroyed the Bai family's martial emperor's hand. The Bai family's martial emperor was shocked and said angrily, "Who is it?" The next moment, an old figure staggered over from afar. The other party was clearly 400 to 500 meters away, but he crossed over 100 meters with a single step. It was an old man wearing a mental hospital's uniform. His hair was disheveled, and he had a rosacea nose. His forehead was sunken, and he staggered as if he was drunk. He was crying and laughing at the same time. Seeing who it was, Qianqian's eyes lit up. "Grandpa's son." The Bai family's martial emperor stared at him as if he was facing a great enemy. A few seconds later, his expression changed. "So it's you. You've been hiding for 20 years. I didn't expect you to appear in the end." The old man didn't seem to hear him. He crazily circled around the crowd, kneeling on the ground a few times, and laughed like a child. Yang Tian, who had already given up all hope, couldn't help but stare at him with his eyes wide open. He thought to himself, "Is this the grandpa son that Qianqian has been talking about? Why does he look like a lunatic who ran out of a mental hospital?" Qianqian ran over and grabbed his trousers tightly. Her eyes were filled with tears of seeing a loved one. "Grandpa son, I'm Qianqian." The two words Qianqian caused the old man's eyes to regain a trace of clarity. He carried Qianqian on his shoulder and once again returned to his crazy appearance. "Bastard." Seeing that the other party had actually ignored him, the Bai family's martial emperor snorted coldly. A huge palm immediately suppressed the old man and the young man below. Chapter 793. As the gigantic palm slammed down, the area within a radius of 20 feet on the ground instantly fell into darkness, as if the sky had been covered by dark clouds. "It's over." Yang Tian couldn't help but reveal a look of despair. If such a technique were to land on them, they would all die. However, just as the gigantic palm was about to land on the old man suddenly raised his head and a glint flashed across his eyes. In the next moment, the gigantic palm collapsed with a loud bang. Seeing this scene, everyone could not believe their eyes. This was way too awesome. The Bai clan's martial king's eyes narrowed, and he was also shocked. Even the Shao clan's martial king wouldn't be able to break through the palm he had used just now so easily. This is fun. Again. The old man kept clapping his hands as he looked at the Bai clan's martial king in the air and laughed crazily. He jumped like a 3 or 4-year-old child. Humph! The Bai clan's martial king snorted coldly. His body moved, and he suddenly descended from the sky. The multicolored light on his body also dissipated, allowing everyone to clearly see his facial features. It was a dwarf about 2 meters tall, wearing a purple robe. His facial features were fair, and his cheeks were faintly filled with baby fat. However, his eyes were like lightning that shook one's heart. This old man wants to see if you're really crazy or just pretending. The Bai clan's martial king fiercely stomped his foot. In that instant, the ground within a radius of 10 miles of the Nine Dragons Lake shook violently. Countless buildings collapsed, and under the shocked gazes of countless people, streams of yellow air shot out from ground. These yellow streams of air seemed to have been summoned as they all crossed 1,000 meters and landed in the hands of the Bai clan's martial king. In the end, they condensed into a yellow pagoda peak. If there was a martial king present, he would realize that the Bai clan's martial king had extracted the earth vein chi within a radius of 1 mile and turned it into a mountain. The small mountain in his hand that seemed to be no more than 10 inches heavy was actually 1,000 kilograms. Go! The Bai family's martial monarch let out a cold snort, and the pagoda in his hand flew out. After it flew into the air, it suddenly grew in size and turned into a 3-story tall mountain. It suddenly pressed down on the old man from above. The old man remained motionless as he stretched out his hand. His hand suddenly expanded and pierced through the clouds like a giant pillar that supported the heavens. With a single palm, he flattened the 3-story mountain peak. What? The Bai family's martial emperor retreated in shock. Before he could react, the huge palm faced down and pressed down on the Bai clan's martial monarch. It was as if the sky was collapsing. The Bai family's martial emperor waved his hand and subconsciously wanted to tear space apart to retreat. However, at that moment, the huge hand had already pressed down and slapped him to the ground. Everything returned to peace. Yang Tian and the others who witnessed this scene were horrified. This was the first time they had seen a human being's strength reach such a level. He was able to move mountains and move seas easily. It was almost like a celestial technique. At the same time, they immediately felt the pressure on their bodies disappear, and they instantly regained their ability to move. Let's go. The old man seemed to have regained a trace of consciousness. After holding Qianqian on his shoulder, he turned around and was about to leave. He was a man of few words. Qianqian hugged his neck tightly and pointed at Su Yuhan, Yihai, Wulan, and the rest. She said weakly, "Grandpa's son, take big sister, Grandpa, and Grandma away too. Otherwise, the bad guys will kill them." Only then did the old man turn around and look at Su Yuhan and the rest. With a grab in the air, Su Yuhan, Yihai, Wulan, and the rest felt an extremely terrifying power. Their bodies flew up uncontrollably. In the next moment, the old man disappeared with a few of them in the blink of an eye. Yang Tian watched the scene in a daze. When he reacted, he subconsciously wanted to chase after them, but he did not know where to go. Xiaoya frowned and said worriedly, "He took Master's wife and the rest away. He should be fine, right?" "I don't think so. Apart from being mentally unstable, this old man doesn't seem to be hostile to us. If it weren't for him earlier, I'm afraid we would all be dead." Yang Tian gulped and looked at the place where the Bai family's martial emperor was slapped to the ground. He said hurriedly, let's go. We'll think of a way to find out where Yuhan and the rest are when we're safe." An hour later, by the Wu River, a crazy old man carrying a little girl on his shoulder appeared by the river with 2 men and a woman floating behind him. The old man looked up and sized up the entire Wu River. Hot tears rolled down his eyes all of a sudden. Subsequently, he knelt on the beach and kowtowed to the river. Su Yuhan, Yihai. And Wulon did not dare to interrupt him. Qian obediently extended her little hand to wipe his tears and said timidly, "Grandpa's son, don't cry." The old man stood up and suddenly moved his hands to form a seal in the air. Two murderous dragons spewed out from his palms, one black and one white. Subsequently, they shot to the center of the Wu River and rotated intensely. As the two baleful dragons rotated, the entire Wu River began to boil. Countless waves shook the surface of the river violently, as if there was a pair of invisible hands stirring up the waves. At the next moment, under Su Yuhan and the rest's terrified gazes, the waves in the middle of the river suddenly spread out. A completely black ship appeared strangely from the bottom of the river. Su Yuhan exclaimed, "The ghost ship?" Before she could think too much, the old man waved his sleeve and stepped onto the ghost ship with the three of them. The ghost ship rolled in the middle of the river and eventually disappeared. The entire process happened in just a few minutes. That night, an explosive news spread throughout China. The 5 ancient clans of Shang Santian had appeared and descended on the Yi family of Tiannan's Lin City. The Yi family was destroyed, and the Dragon Soul King, Niu Shan, died in battle. Nearly 1,000 people were killed or injured at the scene. The members of the Yi family had mysteriously disappeared, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Miaojiang was destroyed, and Shang Santian occupied Miaojiang. Ganzhou's Murong family submitted, the spiritual medicine mountain submitted, and all the wealthy families in Tiannan submitted. Shang Santian issued a wanted order for the Yi family. Anyone who provides information about the Yi family will be rewarded with $100 million and a golden dragon pill. At that moment, the entire China was in an uproar. Some people sympathized with the Yi family, while others clapped their hands and cheered. They all chose to submit to Shang Santian, especially those martial artists who had been stuck at the martial Dao master stage for many years. They were envious and activated their energy to search for the Yi family's whereabouts. What no one knew was that on Kunlun Mountain that night, a young man in a suit ignored the cold of the snow. A young man in a suit ignored the cold of the heavy snow and carried an old man who was covered in blood. He climbed up the snowy peak step by step, ignoring the cold of the snow and ice. With tears in his eyes, he dug the ice layer and finally buried the old man. What no one knew was that on that night, in the northeastern mountains, a group of people quietly entered the old forest that the northeasterners feared. Be it the mountain spirits or wild monsters, they all made way for this group of people. In the extreme north of Earth, a figure descended from the sky, strangely, and fell heavily into the glacier that was 10,000 kilometers long. P.S. Today's update for the 5th chapter has been completed. We'll continue tomorrow. Please get monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 794. In the far north, the Greenland ice field. The Greenland ice field covered nearly 80% of Greenland, about 171 million square kilometers. It was the second largest ice field in the world, second only to the Antarctic ice field. In the endless world of ice and snow, more than a dozen sled dogs were biting a walrus crazily. Although the walrus was covered in wounds, it seemed to have realized that it was about to die. It went berserk and crazily collided with the sled dogs that were pouncing on it. Almost in the blink of an eye, a sled dog would be sent flying. Its body twitched violently a few times before it stopped moving. Scarlet blood quickly solidified in the cold weather. "Go back." Jans, who lived in the village in Greenland, waved the whip in his hand and lashed it heavily on the sled dogs that wanted to turn back, urging them to end the battle quickly. Based on his experience as an old hunter, a storm would arrive soon. If he did not deal with the walrus in front of him as soon as possible, he would be buried in the storm. At this moment, the bloodied walrus suddenly shook off the sled dogs on its body and charged at him quickly, its eyes filled with hatred. Caught off guard, Jan staggered and fell to the ground. He widened his eyes in fear as he looked at the walrus that was getting closer and closer. It was an adult walrus that was 4 meters long and weighed 2 tons. Even a dozen fierce sled dogs could not do anything to it. If it crashed into him, he would definitely die. Just as the walrus was about to approach him, it suddenly stopped in its tracks and raised its head to look at the sky above its head, its eyes filled with fear. Yinz subconsciously looked up, and the scene he saw caused his mouth to open wide. His face was filled with shock, and the dozen or so sled dogs in the distance were kneeling on the ground, howling in a low voice, as if they were afraid of something. A spatial rift had suddenly appeared in the sky. At first, it was only the size of a bucket, but then it grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it had reached more than 30 meters in diameter, like a bloody mouth. Jace kowtowed at the rift in the sky and uttered all sorts of strange words, as if he was praying for something. At that moment, a black shadow shot out from the crack and smashed heavily onto the ice less than 30 meters away from Yachts. Boom! The entire surface of the ice violently trembled. Soon after, it was heavily caved in. Shockingly, it had been forcefully smashed through. Boundless cold air was emitted from within. Under Jace's horrified gaze, a thin figure slowly emerged from the huge ice cave that had sunken in. It was a young man dressed in black. The young man's facial features were ordinary, and he was thin. However, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The other party was Yi Chun, who had been sent out of the ancient teleportation formation in the ancient desolate realm's ultimate ruin. However, he had been sent to this place by accident. That was close. Yi Chun forced a smile as he dried his drenched body with his supernatural power. Fortunately, that ancient teleportation formation teleported me to a height of 100 meters. If it teleported me deep underground, only then did he raise his eyes and look around. All he saw was a world of ice and snow. When his gaze landed on Jace, he said, "Hello, may I know where this is?" However, Jace kowtowed to him. Yi Chun frowned. He walked over and tapped his glabella with his finger. Subsequently, he asked in Mandarin again, "Esteemed Lord God." Jace ignored the bone-chilling cold on the ground and kowtowed to Yi Chun. "My name is Jace. I'm a hunter from Greenland Village. Lord God?" Yi Chun was speechless, but he still listened to the introduction carefully. Subsequently, he asked a few more important questions. His frown slowly eased. "So this is the North Pole. This person in front of me is an Inuit who lives in the North Pole. Logically speaking, that energy refinement cultivator from the pre-Qin dynasty was a Chinese after all. Why would he be teleported to this godforsaken place? After all, this place is worlds apart from China. Fortunately, I was teleported back to Earth in the end. At the very least, I was teleported to Mars or another planet." He secretly shook his head and looked at Jace. "Jace, do you have a map?" "Map?" Jace was stunned for a moment before he said, "Esteemed Lord God, I only have a map of Greenland, but I left it at home. Let's go, I'll bring you back." Yi Chun waved his hand and carried him along with the walrus corpse that had died from excessive blood loss. Under Jace's lead, they turned into a streak of light and left. China. After Shang Santian descended to Tianan and destroyed the Yi family, the forces in the country were reshuffled. Since Xiao Kuan had spared Yao Bingyue's life, she immediately announced that she had submitted to the Xiao family of Shang Santian after returning to the spiritual medicine mountain. Murong Shue's situation was similar to hers. As soon as she returned to the Murong family, she took advantage of the fact that Yu Shasha was escaping with Yang Tian and the rest to snatch her position as the family head. At the same time, she ordered the arrest of Hui Yushan and his daughter, the successor of the Hui family fist, who had received Yi Chen's guidance. Xiao Kuan occupied the Yi family's original villa and ordered people to kill countless people from Miaojiang. He got his own people to take over Miaojiang. At the same time, he sent people to Hong Kong's Tang family to seize their wealth. The other forces in Hong Kong surrendered. Following a series of ruthless methods from Shang Santian, many forces in the country changed sides one after another. The first to change sides was the wealthy families in Tianan that were originally led by Yi Chun. The wealthy Gu family was not destroyed because they had a military background. However, they were under surveillance, and old Master Gu's personal freedom was restricted. Li Yunxiao, Han Qinghu, and the rest in the capital were suppressed by their competitors. Not only were their military power removed, but they were also sent to prison. Their lives were worse than death. It could be said that almost everyone who was related to Yi Chun was implicated. After countless forces received the order from Shang Santian, they crazily used their power to search for Yang Tian, Su Yuhan, and the rest who had disappeared. A portion of the Star Pavilion members who were wandering outside were brutally killed one by one. The Star Group fell into the hands of Shang Santian, and the Yi family's ancestral grave was dug out in public by the people of Shang Santian. The corpses were trampled into pieces and scattered outside. The most mysterious organization in China, the Celestial Master Hall, appeared. They announced to the public that the Yi family had colluded with the enemy and betrayed the country. The Yi family was wanted all over the world. At the Yi family's villa in Lin City, Tiannan, after a powerhouse from Shang Santian arrived in Tiannan, he pointed at Xiao Kuan's nose and cursed, "Investigate. You must investigate. Find them even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground." Yes. Xiao Kuan nodded extremely respectfully. He seemed to have thought of something and said hesitantly, "Elder, I'll ask a question. Rumor has it that the Bai family's martial emperor was slapped to the ground. Is he?" This was what he was most worried about. Even the Bai family's martial emperor was no match for that mysterious powerhouse. If the Yi family really had this person behind them, would they suffer revenge for what they had done now? Don't ask what you shouldn't know. Mind your own business. The Xiao family powerhouse's eyes narrowed. In reality, his heart was in turmoil. After all, a person like the Bai family's martial emperor was on par with the Xiao family's patriarch in terms of strength and status. However, he was still slapped to the ground. Although he did not die, his vitality was greatly injured. He would not be able to recover without 8 to 10 years. At that moment, a young man walked in quickly and whispered something in Xiao Kuan's ear. Ha ha ha! Xiao Kuan was overjoyed when he heard that. He turned to the Xiao family powerhouse beside him and said, "Elder, we found the whereabouts of the Yi family." Outside the Yi family villa, a young man about 15 or 16 years old in school uniform stood on the spot respectfully. He lowered his head and looked around from time to time. In the end, his gaze landed on the person from Shang Santian in front of him. He said with a smile on his face, "May I ask when that lord will see me?" That person smirked coldly. "Just you wait." A young man from the Xiao family walked over and looked at the young man indifferently. "Elder Xiao has orders. Let him in." The young man was overjoyed when he heard that. After following the person into a room, he immediately knelt before Xiao Kuan, who was sitting in front of him. Zhao Xiaodian greets Senior. Seeing that he was young, Xiao Kuan frowned in disbelief. "Do you really know the whereabouts of the Yi family? How dare you lie to me? I'll make you wish you were dead." Chapter 795. I know. Zhao Xiaotian shuddered and stammered. Sir, although I'm not a member of the Yi family, my stepmother's lover, Yellow Spring, knows the Yi family. Even Mad Southern Ye's subordinate, Lin Tai, has to be respectful to Yellow Spring. Xiao Kuan's eyes lit up. "Oh? Why don't you tell me?" Only then did he notice the rebellious streak in Zhao Xiaotian's head. He thought to himself, no wonder this person was willing to betray the Yi family. He was born to be a rebellious person. Zhao Xiaotian immediately told him everything about the Patriarch of Hell and his stepmother, as well as how Yi Chun had killed people from Shang Santian in Lin Tai's casino in front of him. At the end of his sentence, he even added fuel to the fire. "Sir, Yi said that my bones are amazing. It's obvious that I'm a natural seedling for cultivation, so he insisted on taking me in as his disciple. But I didn't agree." "Your bones are amazing?" Xiao Kuan smirked coldly. How could he not know what Zhao Xiaotian was thinking? He said, "As long as you can provide me with useful information, we can guide you in your cultivation." "Thank you, sir." Zhao Xiaotian was extremely excited. He mustered up his courage and said, "Sir, I heard from my stepmother that the lover called Yellow Spring seems to be in the northeast. If I'm not wrong, he must have hidden the people from the Yi family." "Northeast?" Xiao Kuan's eyes narrowed. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Zhao Xiaotian nodded. He was sweating internally. In reality, He was not very sure either. However, as long as he had a guess, he would not give up on this opportunity to rise to the top. Initially, he wanted to become Yi Qin's disciple. However, who would have thought that Shang Santian would descend and destroy the Yi family not long after? Although he did not know what Shang Santian was, to him, the Yi family was finished with Yi Qin's death. The people from Shang Santian could even destroy the Yi family, so they must be very powerful. Since he was young, Zhao Xiaodian had sworn to be successful in the future. He wanted to be a superior person. Naturally, he was unwilling to let go of this opportunity, even though Yi Qin and the Patriarch of Hell had treated him well before. However, Zhao Xiaodian, could even force his stepmother to entertain guests in order to earn money. What could an outsider like Yi Qin and the Patriarch of Hell do? As he was speaking, the young man from before let a person in and introduced him to Shao Kun. Elder Shao, this is the new palace master of the Heavenly Palace, Shun Xingyao. Xingyao greets Elder Shao. Shun Xingyao bowed to Shao Kun respectfully before cupping his fists and saying, after Guan Shanyue died, Xingyao became the new palace master of the Heavenly Palace. Xingyao can do what Guan Shanyue did for you previously. At this point, he smiled faintly. Xingyao has brought good news for Elder Shao. We found out that the Yi clan has escaped to the old forest in the northeast and haven't come out since. I've already arranged for people to keep a close eye on them. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Xiaodian heaved a sigh of relief, as if a huge burden had been lifted from his shoulders, and then an expression of wild joy appeared on his face. Because he had made the right bet. Not only would he not die, but he would also achieve meteoric success. Very good, very good. Shao Kun laughed out loud. His smile was filled with killing intent. Pass down my order. Everyone is to get ready. We must reach the northeast before afternoon. His brows were filled with fierceness. Niu Shan is dead. The longevity swordsman Chun Tulong is also dead, and the Xuanji has been crippled. Let's see who can save you this time. The remnants of the Yi clan. In the prison filled with formations in the Celestial Master Hall of China. The Grand Master of Wudong's sect, Li Xuanji's entire body was locked up, and his dantian had been crippled by someone using a tyrannical method. His cultivation base was completely lost, and at this moment, he seemed to have aged dozens of years. As one of the 4 great guardians of the Celestial Master Hall, Jiang Xingyang stood outside the prison and looked at him with a faint smile. Li Xuanji, you never dreamed that you would have such a day, right? Why? Li Xuanji opened his eyes weakly and looked at him accusingly. Why? Why did the second high priest help Shang Santian? Aren't you afraid that the head high priest will come back to punish you? The Celestial Master Hall was created by the great ancestor. There were a total of 4 great priests. One of them was Chun Tulong, the second was Ma Changgong, the third was Li Xuanji, and the 4th was Jiang Xingyang. When Shang Santian attacked the Yi clan, he had also received the news. At that time, he had planned to go to Tiannan to stop everything. Unexpectedly, he was suppressed by the second high priest, who had never shown his face. Not only did the second high priest capture him with his pseudo-emperor stage combat strength, he even crippled his cultivation and imprisoned him here. Head high priest? Jiang Xingyang smirked coldly. Are you talking about that old fart, the longevity swordsman, Chun Tulong? If he were alive, we wouldn't dare to act rashly. Unfortunately, this old fart was killed by the Bai family in Kunlun. The longevity sword severed longevity, but he didn't expect it to sever his own longevity. What? Li Xuanji felt like he was struck by lightning. The head high priest is dead. Not only is Chun Tulong dead, Jiang Xingyang said mercilessly, even your subordinate, the Dragon Soul King, Niu Shan, is dead. This piece of trash is only an intermediate stage martial venerable, yet he tried to help the Yi family. He's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. His death is not to be regretted. It's over. Li Xuanji collapsed to the ground as if he had lost all hope. He cried on the spot, the Chinese cultivation world is finished, completely finished. He seemed to have thought of something and looked at Jiang Xingyang in extreme pain. Why did you and the second high priest help Shang Santian? Have you forgotten the great ancestor's last words and the responsibility of the celestial master hall? Why? A strange look flashed across Jiang Jingyang's eyes as he said with a faint smile, "That's a good question. Seeing that you're not far from death, I might as well tell you that the second high priest is actually from the Lin family of Shang Santian." Li Xuanji roared, "Impossible! This is absolutely impossible." "Impossible?" Jiang Jingyang smiled disdainfully. Back then, Shang Santian had already predicted that the great ancestor would secretly arrange for the second high priest to change his name and join the Celestial Master Hall in order to fight against Shang Santian. The second high priest has been hiding for decades. If not for Chun Tulong's death, the second high priest would not have exposed his identity. Blurg! Li Xuanji vomited blood on the spot and laughed as if he was mocking himself. "Ha! What a great Shang Santian! What a great celestial master hall! We've been waiting for decades, and this is the outcome. Don't worry, I won't kill you now." Jiang Jingyang looked down at him from above. "I've already sent someone to find the whereabouts of the remaining members of the Yi family. After we kill all of them, no one in the Chinese cultivation world will be able to resist Shang Santian. I want you to see the complete destruction of the Chinese cultivation world with your own eyes." Spiritual Medicine Mountain. Yao Bingwa looked at Yao Huayuan excitedly and said, "Father, there's news from Shang Santian just now. It said that they've found the whereabouts of the remaining members of the Yi family. This time, even the gods won't be able to save them." "Bingwa, isn't Shang Santian going too far?" Yao Huayuan sighed softly. "After all, the Yi family has never had any enmity with Shang Santian. They don't deserve to die. Moreover, I'm worried." "Father, what are you worried about?" "I'm worried that Mad Southern Yi isn't dead." Yao Huayuan's lips moved slightly. He looked around and said softly, "Everyone said that Mad Southern Yi is dead, but we haven't even seen his corpse. What if it's fake?" Yao Bingyue's expression changed slightly when she heard that. The news was confirmed by Shang Santian. It can't be fake. Moreover, Yi has stepped onto the ghost ship, and everyone knows how dangerous it is. Otherwise, countless people wouldn't have died because of it. At this point, her expression was a little ferocious. "Father, don't forget who caused us to become so old. We can't do anything to Yi, so we can only vent our anger on his family." Yao Huayuan sighed heavily and did not say anything else. Ganzhou's Murong family. At that moment, Murong Shui was dressed extremely beautifully. She stood quietly in front of the mirror and looked at her face, as if she was enjoying everything. "Sha, don't blame me. You don't have the right to be the head of the Murong family. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too naive. You gave me everything, causing me to secretly make you a figurehead without you knowing." A smug smile appeared at the corner of her lips. In this world, honest people don't have a good ending. The people from Shang Santian have already headed to the northeast. Soon, you silly girl will die with the remaining members of the Yi family, and I'll still be alive and well. Chapter 796. Linsong was the border between China and Myanmar. Linsong was connected to Dali to the north and Baoshan to the west. It was located between the Kanglin River and the New River. A skinny figure sped through the air. When he entered China, his pitch-black eyes sized up the world. There was a hint of a button in the depths of his indifferent eyes. "Flow, China, I Yichun am back." Yichun spread his hands and enjoyed the fresh air of his motherland. He seemed to be reminiscing and excited. "I'll be at Lin City in half an hour. I wonder how my parents in Yuhan are doing." At this moment, waves of miserable screams and sounds of fighting came from the distant river surface, accompanied by the fluctuations of strength qi. Yichun squinted and lifted his head to look. He saw a ship on the river 300 meters away. There were two groups of people fighting intensely on the ship. From time to time, people would fall into the river, and blood dyed the surrounding river red. It seemed like such a trivial matter had nothing to do with him. But he took the initiative to rush towards the ship because he sensed a familiar aura on the ship through his divine consciousness. The battle on the ship seemed to be about to end. A woman jumped into a speedboat under the protection of two middle-aged men. She seemed to want to escape. The woman struggled in the speedboat, and looked at a man covered in blood on the ship with incomparable sadness. She cried heart-wrenchingly, "Uncle Dong, Uncle Dong! Serong, go! Go quickly! Don't worry about me!" On the deck of the ship, a bald man held back 3 men fearlessly. His eyes were filled with madness. "Uncle Dong promised your father that I won't let anything happen to you even if I die." A sinister-looking man punched him in the chest and smirked coldly. "Dong Chenglong, you can't even protect yourself, yet you still want to protect that B*TCH. You're delusional. 2 of you, keep that B*TCH here. She's the daughter of the Medicine King, Sun Jianyan. She must know where Sun Jianyan hid the key to the secret vault before he died." As soon as he said that, immediately, a man who was fighting with Dong Chenglong leaped towards a speedboat. At this moment, his footsteps paused, and he suddenly raised his head to look into the distance. There was a black-robed young man walking through the air. Even though there was no aura coming from the young man, as he got closer and closer, there was a faint, intense pressure coming from the area. This pressure made it difficult for everyone to breathe. "May I ask who you are, senior?" "This junior is Qiannan's Lu Jishuan. Today, I was ordered to clean up the sect. If I have offended senior in any way, I hope that senior will forgive me." The malicious-looking man who spoke earlier immediately took 2 steps forward and bowed deeply to the figure in the air. He buried his head low, and his attitude was extremely respectful. Walking on air, that was the mark of a martial Dao grandmaster. With his meridian opening cultivation base, he was nothing more than an ant in front of them. So he didn't dare tarry, and he took the initiative to apologize. When the woman on the speedboat heard this, she subconsciously looked up at the figure, and her pretty face suddenly froze, revealing an expression as if she had seen a ghost. "Miss Sun, how have you been?" While Lu Jishuan and the rest were trembling in fear, Yi Chun, who was in the air, chuckled softly. Subsequently, he landed on the deck and looked at the woman carefully with a gentle gaze. The woman before him was Sun Serong, the daughter of the Medicine King, Sun Jianyan. Back then, Yi Chun had gone to treat her for a heavenly spirit flower. Lu Jishuan's heart sank when he heard that Yi Chun seemed to know Sun Serong. Just when he was about to lift his head, Sun Serong's voice rang in his ears. "Why, your Master Yi?" At that moment, Sun Serong finally reacted. She cried out while looking at Yi Chun in a daze. Her haggard face was filled with shock and disbelief. "Isn't this guy dead? Why is he alive again?" Lu Jishuan and the rest could not help but lift their heads to look at Yi Chun by instinct as soon as she said that. They were stunned at first, then they seemed to have thought of something. They looked at Yi Chun as if they had seen a ghost. "Mad Southern Yi, you're not dead? How is that possible?" The most shocked person was none other than Lu Jishuan. He looked at Yi Chun blankly as deep fear surged in his eyes. It could be said that as the news of Yi Chun's death spread and Shang Santian entered the world, the entire China was in chaos. Everyone who was related to Yi Chun in the past was implicated. For example, the entire Qiannan Medicine King, Sun Jianyan's family. The entire Qiannan knew that the Sun family was the Yi family's force. Therefore, no one dared to target the Sun family. As the news of Yi Chun's death spread, various forces were ready to make a move. Meanwhile, Lu Jishuan and the people behind him were people who coveted the Sun family's property. Under the joint efforts of several forces, they destroyed the Sun family and even chased after Sun Serong all the way here. However, Yi Chun was still alive. What was the difference between their actions and rebellion? Since ancient times, how many rebels and traitors had a good ending? "Run, we must spread the news that he's not dead." Thinking to this point, Lu Jishuan left everyone behind and jumped into the surging river. He dived into the water with all his might. The entire process was very fast. Sun Serong said hurriedly, "Mr. Yi, don't let him escape." "Escape?" Yi Chun smirked coldly and grabbed at the river's surface through the air. An invisible suction force spread out. At that moment, the entire river's surface exploded, and an extremely miserable figure was caught in his hand. Lu Jishuan struggled and roared, "Spare me! Spare me!" "Kacha!" Yi Chun crushed him to death on the spot. Meanwhile, The rest fled in all directions when they saw that. However, they were killed by each and one after another. The entire process was like crushing dry weeds. Sun Serong, Dong Chenglong, and the rest were dumbfounded. Yichen lifted his head to look at Sun Serong and said while frowning, "Ms. Sun, what exactly happened? Why are you guys being chased by these people? You don't know that such a huge thing has happened to your Yi family?" Sun Serong widened her beautiful eyes and looked at him in disbelief. Yichen shook his head lightly. Seeing that there was something wrong with her expression, an uneasy feeling surged within him. What happened to my Yi family? Sun Serong wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, she bit her red lips and looked at him with extremely complicated eyes. "Why your Yi family has been destroyed." Boom! As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly realized that the temperature between heaven and earth seemed to have dropped by dozens of degrees. Meanwhile, Yi Chen's initially gentle face turned unusually ferocious at that moment. "Did you say that my Yi family has been destroyed?" "That's right. Your subordinate, Lin Tai, died in battle. Your second uncle and second aunt died. However, your parents, wife, and daughter escaped." Looking at his ferocious face, Sun Serong told him everything she knew anxiously. She seemed to have thought of something at the end of her sentence. "By the way, I heard that your parents, wife, and daughter escaped to the northeast. Go save them quickly. I heard from Lu Jishuan that the people from Shangsantian have already headed to the northeast. If you're a minute late, I'm afraid they'll..." Boom! Before she could finish speaking, she felt a shocking, murderous aura shoot into the sky. Everyone, including her, could not withstand such a terrifying, murderous aura. They retreated in shock. However, the change only lasted for a moment. The murderous aura dissipated quickly again. The ferocity on Yi Chen's face disappeared as well. It was replaced by coldness. It was endless coldness. It was like ice that could freeze one's soul. "Miss Sun, this is goodbye." With that, he flew towards the north. Sun Serong looked into the distance, lost in thought. Dong Chenglong, who was beside her, took a deep breath in and said word by word, "Serong, I'm afraid the entire China is going to be turned upside down this time." Chapter 797. When the bolt of lightning struck his palm, Du Chaozong could not help but grunt. Du Chaozong could not help but groan. A pained expression appeared on his face because he discovered that in that instant, a sliver of incomparably domineering lightning had surged into his body, madly charging at his organs. As the previous voice faded, Yi Qingtong's eyes widened. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the spatial rift behind whom Myling grew larger and larger. An illusory old figure stepped out of the spatial rift on lightning and stood in the air. "Who are you?" Du Chaozong retreated rapidly as he stared at the figure that suddenly appeared in front of him. His brows were filled with fear. The lightning on the illusory figure's body erupted, and the aura it emitted caused the entire space to be suppressed. It even made Du Chaozong a little anxious. "Patriarch!" At that moment, Yang Tian looked at the figure excitedly, as if he had seen his savior. "Why, you're out of closed-door cultivation?" In the lightning, as the illusory figure's lips trembled, an extremely familiar voice was heard. "I've made you guys suffer." Yang Tian felt a lump in his throat when he heard such a familiar voice. He could not help but tear up as he said, "You bastard, you've finally come out. Do you know that old Yi is dead and the Yi family has been destroyed?" The Patriarch of Hell did not say anything. Instead, he quietly listened to his crying. After Yang Tian finished speaking, he said calmly, "I understand." Although his tone was calm, his voice was trembling slightly. The lightning on his body surged again, as if he wanted to turn this place into a sea of lightning. The rest could not help but size up the illusory figure in front of them, especially Li Ying, Xiaoya, and the rest. Their beautiful eyes were filled with shock. Even though they had heard Yang Tian mention the Patriarch of Hell more than once, it was their first time seeing him. At that moment, their eyes were filled with splendor. On the other hand, Xiao Kun, Du Chaozong, and the rest had ugly expressions on their faces. They originally thought that whom Myling, Yang Tian, and the rest were their last hope. They did not expect this mysterious powerhouse to appear before them. Du Chaozong's pupils constricted violently. He took a deep breath in and said, "Who exactly are you? Why did you stop me? Do you know that you're going against Shang Santian?" He tried to threaten the Patriarch of Hell with Shang Santian. Shang Santian? When the Patriarch of Hell heard that, he chuckled softly as if he was disdainful. "When I dominated the mortal cloud world, I even dared to fight a perfected immortal who descended to the mortal cloud world. Do you think the hiding place of trash like you is worthy of being called Shang Santian?" At this point, the lightning around his body erupted, and his voice gradually became cold. "I promised fellow Yi that I would protect the Yi family. This time, the Yi family has suffered a great disaster, and it is my fault. I will collect this debt of blood one by one. Do you really think I'm afraid of you?" Du Chaozong's face was cold. Wisps of black light appeared on his palm, gathering more and more black light. In the end, it turned into a ferocious beast that charged at old ancestor Yellow Spring with a strong, murderous aura. Facing such an attack, old ancestor Yellow Spring's expression remained unchanged. He suddenly stretched out his palm and clenched his fist. Countless bolts of lightning erupted from his hand and shot toward the ferocious beast. With the sudden appearance of the lightning, the ferocious beast roared and its body exploded, turning into countless black gas that scattered in all directions. "What?" Du Chaozong's expression changed when he saw that his sharp attack had been broken. Clearly, he did not expect old ancestor Yellow Spring to be so much stronger than Humiling. Boom! Patriarch Yellow Spring slapped his palm at Du Chaozong from a distance. As the palm was unleashed, the spirit chi in the surroundings trembled. An invisible giant hand crossed the space and slapped at Du Chaozong silently. Although Du Chaozong could not see it, all the hair on his body stood on end at that moment. This was the sixth sense of a pseudo-Emperor Almighty. He immediately shouted and formed a seal with both hands. All the water vapor within a radius of a kilometer gathered towards him. Finally, it condensed into a blue barrier that was more than 30 meters tall in front of him. Bang! In the end, the invisible spatial hand still bombarded the blue barrier. The terrifying impact immediately swept out in all directions at that moment, causing the space where the two of them were to distort. Sensing such power, the people around them had goosebumps at that moment. They did not expect the battle between the two of them to cause such a terrifying commotion. Rumble! With a deafening explosion, the blue barrier finally shattered. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and he looked extremely dispirited. Before he could react, the invisible spatial hand from before pressed down on him again. Du Chaozong's expression finally changed because he started to feel the aura of death. He roared and fought with all his might. Bang! Under everyone's shocked gazes, Du Chaozong's body strangely exploded into a mist of blood, completely disappearing in a thin air. Elder Du! Shock immediately surged in Xiao Kuan's eyes when he saw this scene from afar. His face was filled with extreme shock and fear. A pseudo-emperor Almighty had died, just like that. Yang Tian and the rest stared blankly at the scene. Even Humiling was no exception. Although she was not weaker than Du Chaozong when she was at her peak, it was not to the extent where she could kill him. At the same time, the dozens of powerhouses trapped in the Peach Blossom Formation finally broke through the formation. Before they could think too much, Xiao Kuan's voice rang in their ears. "Kill him! Quick, kill him!" The dozens of powerhouses immediately charged at the Patriarch of Hell with killing intent on their faces when they heard that. Although these dozens of people were not at the pseudo-emperor stage, when everyone's attacks were stacked together, even a pseudo-emperor's expression would change. The Patriarch of Hell was not in a hurry. He stretched out his 5 fingers slightly, and dozens of wind blades that were like lightning snakes slashed at these people from all directions. These people shrieked miserably because under the wind blades, their bodies were all cut into two, and in the end, they fell to the ground. Everyone gasped when they saw this. These were dozens of powerhouses whose strength was not lower than martial Dao masters. Yet they were killed in an instant. Xiao Kuan himself was trembling. Those were the elites of Shang Santian. Even when they destroyed the Yi family, their losses were not as heavy as this. Who is this person? Who is he? He roared in his heart in extreme fear. Then he seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly took off a jade talisman from his chest and threw it into the air. He knelt on one knee and roared, "Patriarch, please save me." Chapter 798. In the peach blossom forest deep in the old forest, a white-dressed lady in ancient attire sat on the stone pavilion, gently plucking the zither strings in front of her. Although she was a few miles away from the Black Bear King and the others, she could still hear the mysterious Snake King's words. "Why are you panicking?" Hu Miling's hand paused, and she frowned slightly. "I once made an agreement with Immortal Master Yi to protect the Yi clan. We, the beasts, are supposed to go against the heavens. How can we do something that goes against our conscience? Moreover, don't forget that Shang Santian has a deep grudge with our old forest. Second brother and sixth brother died because of them." She slowly raised her eyes and sized up the void. Her gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the void as she said in a deep voice, "If they're really here to get someone, why would they send such a huge force? They're clearly trying to massacre our old forest." Yang Tian's tensed heart finally relaxed when he heard the reprimand that was transmitted from the empty space. If old Lin Zi wanted to hand them over due to the situation, they really had no other choice. The Black Bear King snorted coldly, his eyes filled with murderous intent. "Big sister is right. This time, we have no other choice but to fight with our lives on the line." "That's right." The Hedgehog King smirked coldly. "The old forest is our home. We've lived here for 100 years. No matter who wants to destroy it, we'll fight to the death. Moreover, we have a formation to protect it." Liang frowned and said, "What formation?" Rumble. Before Yang Tian and the rest could react, they felt the entire old forest shake, as if there was an earthquake. Immediately after, all the vegetation in the depths of the old forest moved at that moment. A faint green barrier enveloped the entire old forest. From afar, it looked like a huge iron pot had covered the entire old forest. The Black Bear King said proudly, "This is the formation of our old forest." Ever since Yi Chun caused a ruckus in the old forest, the three immortals and Hu Miling had wanted to set up a formation to prevent similar incidents from happening. However, they did not know how to do it. However, ever since Patriarch Yellow Spring came to the old forest, he would occasionally wake up from his seclusion. He would often command the Black Bear King and the others to go down the mountain to buy things for him. In order to command them, Patriarch Yellow Spring would give them some pointers. The formation in front of them was taught to them by the Patriarch of Yellow Spring, and it took the three immortals more than 2 months to complete it. At the same time, in the void outside the old forest, Xiao Kun, who was standing at the front, stood in the air and looked at the sea of trees below with a sinister gaze. Then, he sneered, "Formation? Do you really think that we can't do anything to you just because you have the advantage of the formation?" After saying that, he turned around and bowed to an old man behind him, cupped his fists, and said, "Elder Du, please break this formation." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man behind him took a step forward. He looked down at the entire old forest and smiled disdainfully. "A bunch of ants. To be able to make me, Du Chaozong, personally take action, all of you should be smiling in the underworld. Watch this old man break your formation with one palm." Du Chaozong waved his sleeve, and all the energy in the world surged. A palm print that was nearly 30 meters tall instantly condensed. "Break!" As a cold glint flashed in his eyes, the huge palm print that was about 30 meters tall landed with a loud bang. Under countless shocked gazes, it slammed heavily onto the formation barrier above the old forest. Rumble, the entire old forest trembled violently at that moment. Countless birds and beasts in the old forest naturally died under the aftershock of the palm. Yang Tian, the Black Bear King, and the rest spat blood on the spot, and their expressions were extremely dispirited. The Hedgehog King's expression changed drastically. Pseudo-emperor. The other party is a pseudo-emperor. Buzz, the formation barrier above the old forest began to shake violently. In the end, it exploded with a loud bang, turning into countless light spots that scattered in all directions. The old forest formation was finally shattered by the other party's palm. Oh no, the formation is broken. Yang Tian and the rest were in despair when they saw that. Even the Black Bear King and the other two immortals could not help but change their expressions. They did not expect the other party to send out a pseudo-emperor almighty. All of you, come to me quickly. At that moment, a clear voice that sounded like a silver bell slowly rang in Yang Tian and the rest's ears. Don't resist. I'll deal with the other party's pseudo-emperor almighty. Big Sister is going to attack. The sudden voice made the three immortals ecstatic. The Black Bear King was even more excited. Big Sister has never fought with anyone in the past 1,000 years. With her around, we have nothing to worry about. As the eldest sister of the Northeast Immortals, whom Myling was the most mysterious and had cultivated for the longest time. However, even the three immortals had never seen her fight before. Of course, this was also related to who Myling being trapped by the formation. Let's go. The Hedgehog King immediately led everyone towards the Peach Blossom Forest. When Yang Tian and the rest entered the Peach Blossom Forest under the Hedgehog King's lead, they could not help but be attracted by the scenery before them. As far as the eye could see, the peach blossoms within 5 kilometers were in full bloom. It was extremely beautiful. In the middle of the Peach Blossom Forest, there was a stone pavilion. A woman sat on the stone pavilion and plucked the strings of a zither with her bare hands. The woman was dressed in ancient clothes. She was plain white without any embellishments, as if she wanted to blend into the peach blossoms. Her black hair was simply tied up by a silk ribbon. When he saw her face clearly, even Yi Chun, who boasted that he had seen countless women, could not help but be slightly dazed. Although the woman was dressed in plain clothes without any adornment, she had a devastatingly beautiful face. To be precise, it would be more appropriate to describe her as devastatingly beautiful. Her eyes were extremely lively, like bright gems. However, she was currently staring at a zither on the stone table in a daze. Her bare hand were playing with it, as if she was crying. Even though Yang Tian thought that he had seen countless beauties, he could not help but be dazed the moment he saw the woman. On the other hand, the eyes of Xiaoya and the rest were filled with splendor. Clearly, they did not expect the eldest sister of the three immortals to be such a goddess. Unfortunately, the woman's hands were wrapped in 2 chains, and the end of the chains was the stone pavilion. She seemed to be unable to leave the stone pavilion. Rumble. At the same time, the sound of an earthquake could be heard from outside. The sound became more and more intense, followed by dozens of extremely cold, killing intent. Yang Tian exclaimed, "Oh no, they've caught up." In the stone pavilion, whom Myling's hands paused. Then, she stood up and bowed to the few of them. She smiled sweetly and said, "Please step aside for now." Yang Tian and the rest did not suspect anything. They immediately stood behind the stone pavilion, including the Black Bear King and the other 2 immortals. Bang! With a loud bang, the last formation outside the Peach Blossom Forest was finally broken. Immediately after, dozens of figures flashed and landed at the entrance of the Peach Blossom Forest. In the sky, Xiao Kuan smirked coldly as he looked at Yang Tian and the rest on the ground. There was a strong bloodthirst at the corner of his mouth. All of you actually fled here together? Could it be that you've given up on resisting and want to find a place with excellent feng shui to bury yourself? Chapter 799. Hearing Xiao Kuan's sinister laughter, Yang Tian, who was behind the stone pavilion, slowly raised his head and stared at him. Behind the stone pavilion, Yang Tian slowly raised his head and stared at him. He said word by word, "Smash, you are wrong. Today, this place will be your burial ground." His eyes were filled with hatred. He would never forget that it was this person who had led the people from Shang Santian to the Yi family and destroyed the entire Yi family. He had caused Lin Tai and Yo Qingshan's deaths. If looks could kill, Xiao Kuan would have died countless times. Yi Wen and the rest behind him were the same. Xiao Kuan smiled disdainfully in the face of Yang Tian's words. You're about to die, yet you're still so noisy. Forget it. Seeing that you're not far from death, I can show you a few things. He waved his hand. Bring them up. Immediately after, a man walked over with a few boxes. He threw them hard, and the boxes immediately landed on Yang Tian and the rest. The boxes were opened as soon as they fell. The scene that greeted them made Yang Tian and the rest's eyes turn bloodshot. They were filled with sorrow. Skulls. All of them were skulls. There were Lin Tai's, Niu Shan's, and Yi Chen's second aunts. They were all chopped off. Even though Lin Tai was dead, he still could not close his eyes. He stared at the world as if he had died with a grievance. Mom! Yuan screamed and fainted on the spot. Xiao Kuan looked at Yang Tian and the rest cruelly and said with a faint smile, How is it? Are you satisfied with these gifts? Plop! Yang Tian knelt heavily on the ground and kowtowed to the three heads respectfully a few times. Then he walked over and closed the three boxes before retreating into the distance. He did not say a word throughout the entire process. Xiao Kuan did not seem to be satisfied with his reaction. Just as he was about to speak, his gaze suddenly landed on Hu Miling in the stone pavilion. So there's a vixen here. No wonder she dares to take in the remnants of a Yi family. She's quite pretty. His greedy gaze paused on Hu Miling for a few seconds before he said with a lewd smile, If you're willing to hand over the remnants of the Yi family and submit to Shang Santian, I might spare your life. Impudent. The three immortals, including the Black Bear King, glared at him. On the contrary, Hu Miling's expression did not change. She said calmly, Everyone here is an otherworldly expert who pursues the heavenly way. However, your actions are extremely ruthless. You don't seem to be in line with the heavenly way, do you? Heavenly Tao? How dare you talk to me about the heavenly Tao? When Xiao Kuan heard that, he laughed out loud as if he had heard something funny. To ants like you, Shang Santian is the heavenly Tao. At this moment, an old man behind him snorted coldly. Why are you wasting your breath on these ants? When Xiao Kuan heard this, a sinister expression gradually surfaced in his eyes. Then he sneered and suddenly waved his hand. Massacre the old forest. Yes. Upon hearing his cold cry, the dozens of experts behind him also cried out in unison. A frightening force instantly swept out. Wrapped in killing intent, they landed on the ground and shot towards Yang Tian's group. Kill! Deafening battle cries reverberated throughout the area. The originally peaceful peach blossom forest was suddenly enveloped by a chilling, killing intent. At this moment, Hu Miling's expression remained unchanged in the middle of the stone pavilion. She gently plucked the zither in front of her with her fair hand, and an extremely high-pitched zither sound surged out. Xiao Kuan sneered. You're about to die, yet you still have the mood to play the zither. However, in the next moment, he realized that something was amiss. The zither music contained extreme killing intent and force. Ambush from all sides? Before he could react, the dozens of powerhouses who had landed on the ground were about to approach the stone pavilion. The surrounding peach blossom forest trembled violently. Soon after, countless peach blossom trees seemed to have a life of their own and teleported over. In an instant, they enveloped the dozens of powerhouses. Xiao Kuan's expression changed. Another formation? That was because under his senses, he realized that the dozens of powerhouses were all isolated by the peach blossom formation. Every single one of them was in the vast peach blossom forest. It was like a maze, and they could not see each other. In that case, it was equivalent to dissolving his power. Great! The three immortals could not help but cheer. On the other hand, Yang Tian and the rest revealed shocked expressions. Clearly, they did not expect Hu Miling, who looked like a goddess who had descended to the mortal world, to have such methods. It's just a mere unorthodox method. As long as I kill you, I'll destroy all of them. Xiao Kuan snorted coldly. His figure flashed, and his cultivation base that belonged to a peak martial venerable erupted at that moment. In an instant, A shocking palm print condensed in his hand and slapped towards Hu Miling in the stone pavilion. Hedgehog King hurriedly reminded, "Big sister, be careful." Hu Miling acted as if she did not see it. Her 10 fingers quickly plucked the zither strings. Her speed became faster and faster, and only the afterimages of her fingertips could be seen. Just as Xiao Kuan's palm print was about to touch her, a dazzling golden light suddenly blossomed between Hu Miling's hands. A violent energy wave seemed to be pulling the world as it rippled out with a loud bang. Puffed. Xiao Kuan only felt an incomparably majestic force attacking him. As he spat out a mouthful of blood, his body flew out uncontrollably. Yang Tian and the rest cried out in shock when they saw this. After stabilizing his body, Xiao Kuan looked at the beautiful figure in the stone pavilion again. His eyes were filled with shock. "Why, you're also a pseudo-emperor?" It was just a single exchange. He had lost. From the beginning to the end, Hu Miling's expression had never changed. Her hands paused and she sighed faintly. "If you all retreat now, I won't pursue this matter. Evil creature, you've cultivated too arrogantly." At the critical moment, Du Chaozong shouted loudly. The space beside him slowly distorted, and his figure strangely disappeared from where he was. At that moment, Hu Miling's expression finally changed. She suddenly placed her hands on the zither strings, and golden energy surged in all directions like ripples. In the next moment, Du Chaozong's figure had already landed less than 2 feet in front of her. "Your little tricks are useless against me." Du Chaozong's expression was indifferent. He gently stretched out his right palm, and the water vapor that filled the sky immediately condensed around him. Then, it turned into an extremely cold aura that shot towards Hu Miling like lightning. Hu Miling's expression finally turned serious. The zither stood up like lightning. As she suddenly stroked it with her white hand, 3 streams of air that were like fire dragons immediately charged forward. Boom! The 2 attacks suddenly collided, and the resulting power was naturally not small. The entire stone pavilion almost collapsed in that instant. Tap, tap, tap. Du Chaozong retreated more than 10 steps and looked at the person in the stone pavilion with a cold expression. He saw a trace of scarlet blood flowing from the corner of the person's mouth, but his body still remained motionless. When his gaze landed on the chains that locked Hu Miling's hands, he was stunned at first. Then he seemed to have thought of something and sneered. "So you can't leave this stone pavilion?" "Ha ha ha!" Du Chaozong laughed crazily. He waved his hand and directly condensed a claw mark. The claw mark seemed to have pierced through the space and suddenly swept towards Hu Miling. Hu Miling's white hand moved, and a rainbow-like golden energy immediately shot out and collided with the opponent's claw mark. Bang! At that moment, Hu Miling's mouth once again spilled blood, and the zither in front of her shattered, and all the strings were broken. "Ha ha!" Du Chaozong's cold laughter sounded. "If I'm not wrong, not only can you not leave the stone pavilion, but your only attack method is that zither, right?" Hu Miling's face instantly turned pale. She had been trapped here for as long as 1,000 years. Not only could she not leave the stone pavilion, but she could not even leave the stone pavilion with her techniques. Therefore, she had been practicing the zither all these years. The 3 immortals thought that she was a person with a refined interest, but they did not know that the reason she practiced the zither was because she found that the sound of the zither could pass through the stone pavilion. "On account of your good looks, why don't you come with this old man?" Du Chaozong's lips curled into a cold smile. He moved and appeared in front of Hu Miling. He gently reached out his hand and grabbed Hu Miling's shoulder. Hu Miling bit her lips with a look of despair. If she was not restrained by the stone pavilion, how could the person in front of her hurt her? Not to mention that he could take advantage of her. Just as she was about to fight with her life on the line, the space behind her slowly cracked open. A bolt of lightning suddenly exploded and struck Du Chaozong's palm in an extremely overbearing manner. At the same time, a faint voice slowly came from behind her. "I'm afraid a piece of trash like you is not qualified to take away the woman that I like."